Chapter 1598. Miss Sun, we can be considered friends, right? Even Gong's son Shui, who is usually calm, was stunned by his words. Friends? If she had been young and carefree, she would have had an extravagant hope for these two words. But now, after experiencing all the scheming, she had long since given up on these two words. Now that Xiao suddenly mentioned it, her mind suddenly went blank because she saw the sincerity in the handsome man's eyes. Second young master Xiao, I'm afraid there's a difference between men and women. They couldn't be friends. Xiao didn't expect to hear anything nice from her, so he clicked his tongue. You even dare to fight with others. So why would you be afraid of a difference between men and women? Besides, it's fate that we met. We've been through life and death together, so it wouldn't be wrong to call us friends. Gong's son Shui couldn't refute him after he said it so bluntly. If he told her his identity and his family background were clean, perhaps they could really become friends. Unfortunately, she knew nothing about him, and she felt a little uneasy. Therefore, based on her investigation of him, she felt that if she admitted to being his friend, it would be unfair to him. Of course, investigating his identity was already a form of disrespect, but as the leader of a clan, she shouldered the heavy responsibility of North Korea, so she had to do it. After Xiao finished speaking, he saw her sitting there quietly without responding. He knew the answer in his heart. He thought that her softening her attitude just now was because there was hope for him to break the ice, so he asked this question. However, he didn't expect that he was still wrong. Ice was ice. How could it be melted into water? Miss Sunday, Gong's son Shui heard him call her. His voice wasn't as warm as before, but it wasn't rude either. Her heart skipped a beat, and she turned to look at him. She saw that his clear eyes were full of magnanimity, but also seemed to be mixed with a few strands of disappointment, but they were still bright. I'm not from North Korea. If there's a chance, I can take you to see my country. Actually, if you're willing, I'll accompany you to see thousands of mountains and rivers. However, she didn't respond to his friend's words just now, so he couldn't say this sentence out loud. When Xiao returned from boiling the water, only Gong's son Shui was left in the room. Where's second young master? Xiao thought, could it be that the sect leader had driven him away? Xiao was a trusted aide, so she guessed it immediately. Gong's son Shui was still thinking about what Xiao had just said. She suddenly felt a little upset. Because her questions today had made him suspicious, he openly admitted that he wasn't from North Korea, as if he wasn't afraid that she would find out. However, his last sentence made her heart tremble. But after saying that, he got up and left. She knew that he wasn't joking when he said he would take her out, but compared to the way he looked at her in the past, there was a hint of disappointment in his eyes. She suddenly felt a faint sense of fatigue. Autumn Maple, I'm tired. When Xiao heard this, she immediately said nervously, it might be because of the medicine. Master, you should go rest first. This subordinate will wake you up when it's dinner time. After so many years of suspicion, she was really tired. However, there was nothing she could do. He had admitted that he wasn't from North Korea, but she couldn't just pretend that this didn't exist. She closed her eyes and finally said, Xiao send a message to Qingyu. Tell her that these people from the Xiao clan aren't from the Sun Moon clan. Investigate them in other countries. Autumn Maple was shocked. Weren't we cut off from the other countries? Could it be that someone snuck in? Find a chance to send a message. I'm tired. Gong Xinshu rubbed the space between her eyebrows, then stood up and walked towards the inner room with a tired expression. It was rare to see the sect master so tired. Xiao even forgot about her previous question and immediately followed to serve her. After Xiao left Gong Xinshu's courtyard, he didn't return to his own room. Instead, he went to another courtyard, where his imperial grandfather and Father Chu sparred. To be more precise, it was also where Xiao Ankong played. Before he even walked in, he heard the sounds of sparring inside, as well as the laughter of children. The disappointment in his heart lessened a little, and he strode in. The moment he entered, he saw Hualing. He shook his head at Hualing. Then when everyone was distracted by the sparring between the Emperor Emeritus and Father Chu, he easily leaped onto a tree and sat on top, taking in everyone below him. Xiao smiled when he heard the laughter. Then, He put his hands behind his head, leaned against the tree trunk, and closed his eyes. He remembered what happened in the Ice Beauty's room, and the curve on his lips dropped. Yesterday, his Imperial brother had mentioned to him that there might be a problem with the Ice Beauty's identity. Although he didn't seem to take it to heart, he still paid attention to it, because his Imperial brother would never say something for no reason. He believed in his Imperial brother. He remembered how she kept her mouth shut about her family, how she refused to talk about those assassins who wanted to kill her, and how she tested him today. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't disappointed. But even so, he still thought that if there was a chance, he wanted to take her to Sichuan for a walk, to see other countries. He wanted to share the beautiful scenery that he had once admired with her. If his Imperial brother was here, he would definitely scold him for having no ambition. But there was nothing he could do. He felt that this Ice Beauty was quite pleasing to the eye. Moreover, he didn't know why, but he felt a little heartache for her. Although she acted like she didn't care about anything and didn't care about anything, he just felt that this little girl deserved to be pampered very well. He just wanted to bring all the beautiful things to her. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but rub the space between his eyebrows and laugh at himself. When did he become so benevolent and kind? She was just a stranger he met by chance, yet he was so concerned about her. At this time, Xiao heard the sound of leaves rustling and couldn't help but open his eyes. However, the pair of big eyes in front of him almost scared him to the point of rolling down. He immediately went forward and hugged little Kong, who was standing on the branch, tightly hugging him. After he sat firmly in his arms, he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said with trembling lips, "My little ancestor, how did you get up here? Where are the people who followed you?" If anything happened, he wouldn't be able to explain it to his Imperial brother and sister-in-law, even if he died 10,000 times. Compared to his second uncle, little Kong wasn't flustered at all, but he honestly said, "When I saw second uncle playing on the tree, Bao Bao climbed up alone." Climb? Xiao immediately looked at the distance between them and the ground, and couldn't help but twitch the corner of his eyes. As expected of his Imperial brother's son, he actually had such ability at such a young age. That's right. Soon, Bao Bao will be able to learn martial arts. Just like Hualing and Su Su, Bao Bao won't have to crawl when he flies up. Little Kong patted the bark on his hands in disdain. If his father knew that he was dirty all over, he would definitely not let him near his mother. Thus, he secretly grabbed second uncle's sleeve and wiped his hands. Chapter 1599. Xiao did not notice Kong's small actions. He was worried about his safety and lectured him, "If there's no one by your side in the future, don't do this. Otherwise, second uncle will tell your father. I'll let your father punish you." This little devil was not afraid of anything. In addition, he was doted on by everyone. He could do whatever he wanted. He would only be afraid when his father was mentioned. Kong pouted. I know. I only came up because I saw that second uncle was unhappy. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come up." Hearing this, Xiao was stunned. He touched his face. Was he that obvious? Even a child could tell. At this moment, Kong hugged his neck and said, "Second uncle, don't be unhappy. I'll play with you." Xiao patted his head. "Second uncle has always been happy. Why would I be unhappy?" Nonsense. Kong's face was solemn like a little adult. If it were any other time, second uncle would definitely come and play with us. He wouldn't hide in the tree alone. Xiao sighed. What was wrong with this world? Was it because he was old and could not hide it anymore? Or was Kong too smart? However, Kong's concern made him feel much better. Second uncle is just a little disappointed. Maybe he saw a small flame and pounced on it. Actually, it's just a reflection of the moon in the mirror. He would not tell anyone these words. No matter how upset Xiao was, there was no reason for him to go around telling others. However, Kong was still young, so he did not mind telling him. Anyway, children would just listen to it. However, how could Kong, who could climb a tree and see people's emotions, be an ordinary child? He betrayed Xiao in the blink of an eye. However, although Kong did not understand such profound words, he still comforted him dutifully. Second uncle, Mother said that there are many hardships in life. However, only when you don't make things difficult for yourself can you live happily every day. Second uncle, don't be sad. Kong Kong will accompany you. Although Xiao Kong's words were vague, Xiao Yao still understood. He sighed in his heart. Xiao Kong was so sensible. It must have been taught by his royal sister-in-law. Your mother should be talking about the 8 hardships of life: birth, old age, illness, death, love, separation, resentment, longing, unable to let go. Xiao Kong nodded heavily. That's right. That's it. Xiao Yao smiled bitterly. He was now all alone in the world, free and unfettered, without any illness or calamity. So how could he have any of these hardships? However, there was a bit of bitterness in his heart that he couldn't explain. Later on, Xiao Yao realized that he couldn't ask for it. Second uncle, you have to learn to be open-minded. Little Kong imitated his father and patted him on the shoulder. If Xiao Yao was still a little depressed, it was all gone by Xiao Kong's comforting words. He could not help but hug him happily. Xiao Kong saw that his second uncle finally smiled, revealing his canine teeth. Second uncle, aren't you feeling uncomfortable? Xiao Yao shook his head. With this clown around, it would be difficult for him to feel uncomfortable. Little Kong's eyes lit up. Then, second uncle, bring baby to catch some bugs. What? Catching bugs? Xiao Yao didn't understand. Xiao Kong nodded. That's right. A baby bird fell down, but I couldn't find its mother, so I raised it in my room. Mother said that the baby bird eats worms, but no one was willing to help me catch them. So second uncle, to be honest, although Xiao Yao liked to mess around, he wouldn't do something like catching bugs normally. But the little nephew in front of him was looking at him pitifully, and his soft little body was still in his arms, making him lovable. He had even comforted him just now. So Xiao Yao's heart softened. All right, second uncle will bring you to catch some bugs. Baby knows that second uncle is the best. Let's go and catch some bugs for baby bird. Little Kong was very excited as he jumped up and down on the tree. Fortunately, Xiao Yao was here, otherwise he might have fallen down. Xiao Yao shook his head and flew down. When he put Little Kong down, he saw Hualing standing by the tree. So there was someone watching over Little Kong. As expected, how could someone nurtured by his royal brother be negligent? Suddenly, he realized that this brat had tricked him. Kong didn't care about him at all. He just wanted him to soften his heart and help catch the bugs. At such a young age, his brain was already so smart. Little Kong didn't know that his little scheme had been seen through. He pulled on Xiao Yao's clothes and walked forward. Quick, catch the bugs. A gentleman's word was as fast as a whip. He had already made a promise, so he had to catch the bugs no matter what. So Xiao Yao picked up Little Kong and slapped his, but as a small punishment. Then the two of them went to dig the soil. The Emperor Emeritus looked at their backs and shook his head. Too stupid. Father Chu exposed him. Weren't you also tricked by Kong Kong to catch bugs yesterday? The Emperor Emeritus retorted. You're saying it like you weren't the one digging yesterday. The two of them looked at each other and continued to fight. Hualing looked at the fight here and looked at the digging there. He thought that no matter who he offended in the future, he couldn't offend the little master. That was simply a combination of his master's black bellies and the little princess craftiness. No one could look down on him. Inside the room, the people below were reporting the news. Second master came out of Miss Sun's room and went to the yard to play with the little master, but he looks a bit lonely. Got it, you can leave. Xiao Su dismissed his subordinates. When he turned to the side, he saw the little fellow's serious appearance. He reached out to touch her hand and felt relieved when he felt the warmth. He casually asked, "What are you thinking about?" Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and smiled. I keep feeling that second brother is falling deeper and deeper, but there seems to be a layer separating them on Miss Sun's side. It's a bit hard to figure it out. Xiao Su rubbed her little hand and smiled faintly. You like that Miss Sun a lot? Chu Qingyan sighed softly. She's quite pleasing to the eye, but she has to be suitable for second brother. Seeing that the little fellow was really interested in the two of them, Xiao Su thought for a bit and told her the truth so that she would be prepared. I know what you're worried about. I've already sent people to investigate that servant's background, but this isn't Sichuan. Xiao cavalry will be a bit restrained, so they won't be able to find any information quickly. Chu Qingyin tilted her head and looked puzzled. You have doubts about their identity? Xiao Su picked her up and held her in his arms. His fingers intertwined and played with her. No matter what their background is, since second brother treats Miss Sun differently, we should find out more. Second brother seems smart, but the person involved can't see clearly. As his brother, I have to help him. Chu Qingyin couldn't help but laugh at his words. The big ice cube always silently arranged things for his younger brothers. It was really a blessing to have such an elder brother. I also wish to have an elder brother like you. She sighed. Xiao Su's eyes sparkled. Am I not? Chu Qingyin blinked and was about to refute when she suddenly remembered the words he said to her when he pressed on her body and seduced her with his beauty. Her face immediately turned red. Lover brother? The big ice cube was getting more and more shameless. Chapter 1600. When Chu Qingyin and the others came to this town, they didn't plan to stay for long. However, because Chu Qingyin was found to be pregnant, they decided to stay for the time being to nurse the fetus. This period of nursing lasted for a month or two. Chu Qingyin was already 3 months pregnant, and the fetus was stable. In addition, the Ice Beauty's injuries were almost healed. Therefore, everyone decided to hold a banquet to liven things up. The banquet was set for 3 days later. Xiao Feng was dazzled when she saw the servants bringing in clothes one after another. There were also all kinds of gold and silver jewelry. She pulled one of the servants aside and asked, "Who sent these here?" The servant smiled and said, "Second master asked us to send them here." "All right, Miss Xiao Feng, please help Miss Sun keep them well. We have to report back." When Gong Sun Shui changed into a clean set of clothes and was about to practice her sword in the courtyard, she saw Xiao Feng staring at the room full of things as soon as she came out. These? Gong Sun Shui couldn't help but frown when she saw these things. Xiao Feng saw her come out and immediately replied, "They said they were sent by Second Master, but it's not the New Year or any holiday." Xiao Feng was also confused. Gong Sun Shui didn't care. "Then accept them." Xiao Yao bought whatever he thought of and piled it up here. There were probably 5 or 6 boxes. However, she didn't have time to think about this now. The most important thing now was to practice her sword skills. She hadn't touched a sword for a while. Xiao Feng was dumbfounded as she watched her sect master leave. If it was in the past, her sect master wouldn't accept anyone's gift. However, since her sect master had spoken, she had to accept it no matter how much doubt she had. As soon as Xiao Yao entered the courtyard, he saw the slender figure dancing under the maple tree. The maple leaves were red like fire, and her white clothes were fluttering in the wind. She was red like fire and white like snow. Fire and snow formed the most dazzling scenery between heaven and earth. Xiao Yao quietly leaned against the wall, watching her body as light as a swallow as she danced with her sword. Although her posture was beautiful, every move was fatal. Sometimes, he wondered what kind of environment she grew up in to be able to raise a girl like her, who was as quiet as a virgin and as agile as a rabbit. While Xiao Yao was still in a daze, Gong Sunxue had finished practicing a set of sword techniques. She took a deep breath and exhaled the foul air in her chest. Then, she turned around and looked at the person who had been silent since he came in. His long hair was casually tied behind his head, and he was leaning against the wall without any posture. The mottled colors made him look carefree and unrestrained, as if he was detached from the world. Gong Sunxue felt that she had never seen such a bright and clear man in her life. Without a trace of sharpness, he spoke and laughed gently, without any darkness. His eyes were clear, without the stink of money of a businessman, without the smoothness of an official, without the charm of a villain, and without the ambition of someone who played with power. She didn't seem to care about anything, but when she smiled, it was like a spring breeze in the cold winter, warming people's hearts. The young master was as bright as jade, one of a kind. These thoughts quickly flashed through her mind. By the time she reacted, the person who was 10 steps away was already standing in front of her, picking up her sword and admiring it. She couldn't help but take a step back. Was it because her skills had deteriorated, or because she had let her guard down? Or was it because the person in front of her was much better than her? Otherwise, why couldn't she feel him approaching? Xiao Yao played with her sword, as if he didn't see the change in her mood. He nodded approvingly. It's a good sword. Gong Suanxue took the sword from him. She didn't say anything because she knew he still had something to say. Sure enough, Xiao Yao stood in front of her and looked at her. Seeing that her complexion was good, he said, "Although your injuries have healed, it's best not to do any strenuous exercise. A girl should still take care of herself." She didn't care about the first part of his words, but the last part still made her heart warm up. "I'm not as weak as you think." Before her injuries were fully healed, she had already gone into battle to kill the enemy. Time waits for no one, and your enemy won't give you time. But she still softened her tone because of his concern. Xiao Yao knew that she was a person with big ideas. If he cared too much, it would be counterproductive. Seeing her practice just now, there shouldn't be any big problems, so he simply let her be. "Your swordsmanship is not bad." Seeing that he didn't say anything and changed the topic, Gong Suanxue raised her eyebrows. Ever since they parted on bad terms last time, this person acted as if nothing had happened. He didn't change his attitude towards her. If she didn't like something, he wouldn't force her, such as now. She didn't know if this was his way of doing things, or if it was just for her. "I can still save my life," she said lightly. Xiao Yao felt that this wasn't a good topic to talk about. He touched the back of his head as if he remembered something. "Oh, right. The kitchen is making soup for you. I'll go take a look. Don't burn it." Ever since she didn't need to boil medicine, Xiao Yao seemed to be interested in her meals. He ran to the kitchen every day, and every time he came back, he smelled like smoke. "Do you want to have a match?" Looking at his back as he turned to leave, Gong Suanxue blurted out. A trace of regret flashed across her face, but she really wanted to see how good his martial arts were. Hearing this, Xiao Yao turned around and smiled. "I don't bully little girls." Gong Suanxue's expression became serious. "Xiao Yao, please listen carefully. First, I'm not little anymore. Second, there's no father and son on the battlefield, and there's no difference between men and women in a match." Xiao Yao wasn't scared by her seriousness. Instead, he talked about something else. "All right, I saw that you don't usually have any clothes or jewelry, so I asked someone to send you a few sets. The banquet is in 3 days. Choose what to wear. Even if it's not for my sake, a girl should still dress beautifully. Not only is it pleasing to the eyes of others, but it's also comfortable for you." After saying this, Xiao Yao walked away, talking to himself. "It seems that you practice swordsmanship every day. Then I'll ask the kitchen to buy some bones and stew them." Gong Suanxue watched him talk to himself for a long time, but didn't say anything to her. Did this person think that losing to her would hurt his pride, or was he looking down on her? Or was it really like what he said? Gong Suanxue was suddenly annoyed. She stabbed her sword into the ground and turned around to practice her fist. "Master, it seems that second master really cares about you." Qiu Feng just came out and happened to hear Xiao Yao's words. She couldn't help but laugh. Gong Suanxue snorted coldly. "He just thinks that after taking care of me for so long, if I still dress so plainly, others will think that he mistreats me. That's why he did this." Of course, Qiu Feng didn't believe her sect master's words. In her opinion, the sect master was just using this as an excuse to make a fuss. She was angry that second master didn't practice swordsmanship with her. But why would the sect master be angry? No matter how angry the sect master was, she would never show it on her face. Qiu Feng shook her head. She couldn't figure it out. Chapter 1601. That night, Gong Suanxue prepared to sleep. Tomorrow was the banquet that the idiot mentioned. Although she didn't like crowds, they had saved her. She would give the idiot some face and sleep early so that others wouldn't think that he had mistreated her. However, even if she appeared at the banquet looking unwell, no one would blame Xiao Yao for mistreating her. Because during this period of time, how Xiao Yao had treated her, everyone had seen it with their own eyes. However, no one was willing to expose it. A dignified prince was actually doing his best to take care of a young lady. If word of this were to spread, perhaps no one would believe it. However, Tonight was not a peaceful night. Sect Master, Qing Yu is here. Xiao Feng's voice was hurried. In this quiet night, it made people feel a little cold. In order to prevent being discovered, Xiao Feng had been in contact with the outside world. Now that Qing Yu had suddenly come, and at this time, something big must have happened. Gong Sun Xue's expression tightened. She put on the clothes that she had just taken off and strode out. As soon as she saw her master, Qing Yu immediately bowed and reported, Sect Master, we found information about the Xiao family. Gong Sun Xue subconsciously gripped the armrest. She felt a little uneasy, but she didn't show it on her face. She simply said, Speak. In the past month, we've been investigating relentlessly and finally found some clues. These people are very likely to be related to the Sunblaze sect. To be more precise, these people are probably Murong Yunchuan's people. However, the most important information hasn't been delivered yet. When it arrives, we'll be able to confirm it. Gong Sun Xue let go of the armrest. A complicated expression appeared in her eyes. As expected, it was not far from what she had guessed. The Sunblaze sect has already taken over our stronghold in the Sun Clan. The situation is urgent. I'm afraid that their next step will be to attack the Moon Clan. The High Priest has already received the news and wants you to leave immediately. Although we can't be sure what the Xiao family is doing, based on their relationship with Murong Yunxian, we must stay away from them. I'm worried that if they see through your identity, it will be disadvantageous to you. Qing Yu didn't notice anything wrong with her and spilled the beans. Her heavy and urgent voice was like a storm in this night, causing Gong Sun Xue to be stunned. If Xiao Yao knew her identity, would he harm her? She suddenly laughed bitterly. At a time like this, she was actually concerned about this. She didn't know if she was muddle-headed. She calmed down. When can we confirm their identities? 3 days at the earliest. The news is already on the way, but the High Priest wants you to leave as soon as possible, just in case. When are you leaving? The manpower has been arranged. We can leave now. Gong Sun Xue's gaze fell on the clothes and jewelry placed on the dressing table. She was silent for a while and made a decision. Tomorrow night. Qing Yu did not expect the sect master to make such a decision. She was dumbfounded. Shouldn't the sect master be thinking of retreating as soon as possible at a time like this? Qiao Feng seemed to have thought of something and looked at her sect master in astonishment, but she didn't say anything. Although Qing Yu was somewhat puzzled, she still agreed. Perhaps the sect master had his own considerations. After Qing Yu left, Gong Sun Xue said, You may leave. Qiao Feng wanted to say something, but after opening her mouth, she gave up and turned around to leave. Gong Sun Xue stood by the window and looked at the empty courtyard. She felt that her entire mind was empty. It wasn't until the sun rose from the east and light shone in through the window that she realized that she had been standing like this for the entire night. She moved her stiff body and suddenly felt that she had no strength left. Leaning against the window, she raised her hand and touched her forehead. In the end, she sighed helplessly. Qiao Feng stood outside the door with a cup of hot water. She only walked in when she heard the commotion inside. But when she entered the inner room, she saw her sect master sitting in a snow-white dress. Her collar was wrapped in a fox fur coat, which made her look even more attractive. Sect master, who didn't use makeup often, was holding one of them in a daze. Qiao Feng felt that she had never seen her sect master dressed like this after following her for so long. She couldn't help but want to see if the sun rose from the west today. Gong Sun Xue heard the noise and said to Qiao Feng, Help me apply lip color later. She didn't sleep last night, and her complexion was a little pale. She could only rely on these things to cover it up. Qiao Feng nodded woodenly. Meanwhile, Gong Sun Xue had already started washing up. She studied it for a long time just now, but she didn't know how to use it at all. As expected, she was more suited for holding a sword and not for makeup. After that, when Qiao Feng helped her sect master tidy up her clothes, she asked uncertainly, Sect master, what kind of hairstyle do you want? You decide. Just don't make it too exaggerated. Gong Sun Xue said lightly. Qiao Feng was overjoyed. She had long wanted to dress her sect master up. Her sect master was born beautiful, and her looks were very outstanding. It was because she didn't like to dress up that people always said that Gong Sun Fei was the most beautiful woman in the entire clan. Actually, it wasn't because Gongsun Fei was good at makeup. If her sect master dressed up, she would definitely be the most beautiful woman in the entire clan. But she only dared to think about it in her heart. If her sect master knew that she had such thoughts, she would probably be punished. Sect master felt that those were just superficial skills. She would rather work harder on her real skills. However, her sect master was acting a little strange today. She actually did something that she had never done before. She didn't know if it was for second master. Tui. Those people were most likely their sworn enemies. She must be thinking too much. After tidying up, more than half an hour had passed. Xiao put down the comb and was about to admire her work. However, at this moment, someone walked in. Your door wasn't closed, so I came in. Don't say that I'm trespassing. Before Xiao could finish his words, he turned around and saw the person standing up from the dressing table. White clothes, snow-white skin, red lips, black hair, a flying sky bun, bright moon pearls in her ears, and a jade belt around her slim waist. Her dress fluttered in the wind. She was like a fairy who had walked down from the 9 heavens. She was so otherworldly and beautiful. Xiao was instantly dumbfounded. It wasn't that he had seen too few women. It was because he had seen too many that he was mesmerized by this beauty. Cough, cough, you look very good today. Xiao, who was usually very eloquent, was actually stuttering at this moment. Qiufeng couldn't help but want to laugh when she saw Xiao like this. However, when she thought of the news she had reported last night, she couldn't help but suppress her laughter. Seeing him like this, Gongsun Shui was quite satisfied. It looked like she was dressed quite well. If you keep standing there like an idiot, you'll be late. When Gongsun Shui passed by him, she lowered her head and said in disdain. However, no one saw the smile on her face and the smile in her eyes. Chapter 1602. By the time Xiao regained his senses, Gongsun Shui was already at the door. He slapped his head in annoyance, wondering if the ice beauty would think that he was a lecherous man. Xiao walked towards her in annoyance. The two of them walked side by side to the courtyard. Xiao was the kind of person whose emotions came and went quickly. Otherwise, how could he have lived in the various harem for so long? He returned to his usual joking self. I didn't expect the iron tree to bloom and the ice to warm up. You really exceeded my expectations today. Gongsun Shui never took his silly words to heart. The family rules are strict and we can't waste them. You sent so much, it would be a waste not to use it. Her words instantly shattered Xiao's dream of a woman making herself beautiful for the man she loves. He pursed his lips. He had carefully selected so many clothes and accessories, and even risked being beaten to death by his imperial brother to ask for imperial sister-in-law's help. But when it came to her, it became a waste not to use it. He felt very tired. But perhaps it was because he was used to it that he was full of energy again. But I have to say, clothes make the man. You look quite good after tidying up a little. Xiao was not stingy with his compliments, not to mention that he took the seriously. Gongsun Shui glanced at him and nodded. You look quite decent after tidying up a little. Xiao choked. The ice beauty was getting more and more sharp-tongued. This banquet was proposed by Chu Qingyan, mainly for the liveliness. She had been nursing her pregnancy in the courtyard. Although the child in her belly didn't disturb her, it liked to sleep very much. So she basically rested during the day. Everyone was afraid of disturbing her, so they didn't go to her place often. A few days ago, she suddenly felt that she hadn't seen everyone for a long time, so she took advantage of the good weather to propose a banquet. At first, Xiao Su didn't agree, but he couldn't stand her silently wiping her tears and looking at him. It simply melted his heart. So he waved his hand and ordered people to prepare. Chu Qingyan had just been helped to sit down by Xiao Su. She looked up and saw Yin Luo, Ethereal, the retired emperor, and her parents were already present. Only Dong Ting, Tao Tao, Xiao, and the ice beauty were not here yet. However, it was still early, so there was no hurry. Just then, a loud noise came from the east. Why don't you play the flute? This way, we can cooperate with the zither and flute. It was Tao Tao's voice. I don't know how to play the flute. This was Dong Ting's voice. Tao Tao stopped the person who was walking forward. You're lying. I've heard you boast before. That's right, that's right. Higashio Motetsu's smile faded. When? Tao Tao could feel the coldness in his words. The words that he had bragged about on the day of Qingyin's wedding were stuck in her chest, unable to go up or down. Seeing that she didn't speak for a long time, Higashio Motetsu smiled and knocked on her head. If you want to cooperate with the guqin and flute, find someone who can play it. Anyway, I don't know how to play it. Maybe you can find someone who shares the same interests as you. Don't be silly, let's go. Tao Tao looked at his fluttering clothes, her eyes a little bitter. She understood that it wasn't that he didn't know how to play the flute, but that he wouldn't play it again. That song of sending off the bride was the last time he played it. Even if he couldn't get what he wanted, in the end, he still left all his warmth to that person. Tao Tao quickly rubbed her eyes. If he didn't want to play it, then he wouldn't play it. She didn't care. Chu Qingyin waited for a while before the people from the east came over. Higashio Motetsu walked in front of her and sized her up. He shook his head with a chuckle. Qingyin, there's something that this young master doesn't know if he should say. Chu Qingyin saw him like this and knew that he didn't have anything good to say. She waved her hand in annoyance. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Move aside. Higashio Motetsu said disappointedly. You really don't have the courage to face reality. For your own good, I'll say it. Haven't you noticed that your face has become a lot rounder? You better eat less. Otherwise, you'll become as fat as a ball in the future, and no one wants you. Xiao had just walked away when he saw this scene. He put his hand on his wife's shoulder and looked coldly at Higashio Motetsu. You don't have to worry about that. No matter what Ayan becomes, I will cherish her as much as my life. Higashio Motetsu chuckled and winked at Chu Qingyin. True love indeed. Get lost. If it weren't for the ball in her stomach, she would have kicked him long ago. Higashio Motetsu didn't get lost immediately. Instead, he cupped his hands at Xiao. Pregnant women are indeed hot-tempered. It's been hard on you. Xiao felt that since his love rival wasn't angry at his words, it was obvious that he had already calmed down. He couldn't help but say, throwing a little tantrum is quite cute. Chu Qingyin originally wanted to throw something at Dong Ting, but when she heard her big ice block say that, she felt very happy. If his beloved woman occasionally threw a tantrum, that was called cute. If an unrelated woman occasionally threw a tantrum, that was asking for trouble. She was very happy that her big ice block had helped her turn the tables. At this moment, Tao Tao also walked out. Xiao caught sight of her from the corner of his eye and cupped his hands at Higashio Motetsu. You've worked hard too. Higashio Motetsu saw that he was hinting at something. He glanced at Tao Tao from the corner of his eye and pursed his lips. This Xiao was really protective. Seeing Dong Ting turn and leave in defeat, Chu Qingyin was very pleased. She touched her big ice block's face. You've helped me regain my dignity today. Tell me, what reward do you want? Xiao didn't expect to receive such benefits. He smiled. My wife was very generous today. Then, he whispered something in her ear. Chu Qingyin was originally a little ticklish from his breath, but when she heard him clearly, she was completely stunned. Then, she felt a warm current rush from her toes to her face. You but 3 months. She felt that the top of her head was going to emit steam when she said this. Xiao's eyes flashed with a strong smile. He said in a low voice, Ethereal said that 3 months is enough. You actually asked Ethereal about this. You. Chu Qingyin felt that she was about to be roasted. She immediately threw herself into his arms, afraid that someone would hear. Xiao smiled deeply and hugged his shy wife. No one knew what happened between them. They only saw that Xiao, who rarely smiled in front of others, was actually so happy. Indeed, only Chu Qingyin would be able to open up his emotions, including all of his emotions. When Higashio Motetsu saw this scene, he thought of something and stopped smiling. Xiao must have used him for something again. This person was too smart. It was really uncomfortable. However, he wasn't jealous. It was purely a competition between men. However, Tao Tao, who was sitting beside him, didn't think so. She thought that he still had feelings for Qingyin, and her heart ached. However, at this moment, the appearance of the other two people successfully attracted everyone's attention. Chapter 16:03. A handsome man and a beautiful woman walked side by side, like a walking landscape painting. It was pleasing to the eye, making people unable to look away. That's right, these two people were Xiao and Gong Xue. Everyone had only seen the ice beauty once or twice. Because Xiao said she needed to rest, and they weren't familiar with her, they didn't interact much with her. They only knew that Xiao was hiding a mistress in a golden house. Now that they saw her, she was indeed an ice and snow peerless woman. Cheng Yinluo poked the person beside her, saying with an envious expression, "Look, these two are so compatible. The man is handsome and the woman is beautiful. They're simply a match made in heaven." Ethereal retracted his gaze and held her hand, rubbing it under the table. There was a clear smile on his face, but in my eyes, only you are the most beautiful. Cheng Yinluo suddenly heard these words of love, and the bold and shrewish woman couldn't help but blush. "What are you saying? We're in public." Ethereal laughed softly as he pulled her into his embrace, not letting anyone see her bashful appearance. If there weren't so many outsiders here, he would like to admire this rare side of her alone. Huoling originally thought that he had only been showered with dog food by the second master, but he didn't expect that sitting beside Ethereal, his ears would also be stuffed with dog food. He silently picked up a chair and moved to Jasper's side, sighing pitifully. "There are couples everywhere. I won't go to the front. You're just going to keep a lonely person like me?" Jasper raised her brows and moved her seat to the side, giving him more space. "Jasper, you're still the kind-hearted one." Huoling shifted his seat and immediately praised her. Jasper lightly said, "It's not for you. It's just that I can see the little master better from this angle." Huoling followed her gaze, and, as expected, he saw the little master dancing around the little princess. Huoling felt that his heart was deeply hurt again. A faint smile flashed across Jasper's eyes. The courtyard was empty, with a platform half the height of a person placed in the middle. There were only long tables and chairs on the four sides. 2 people to a table, and the seats were randomly chosen. There was no priority, but because Xiao came late, there were only 2 seats left. Thus, they sat between Ethereal and Little and Kong. Xiao sat close to Ethereal, Gongsun Shui sat close to Little and Kong, and Higashio Motetsu and Tao Tao sat opposite them. Tao Tao had been holding a grudge against Dongting Wangyu since the beginning. No matter how he tried to tease her, she refused to acknowledge him. Hence, she was looking around casually. It was at this moment that her gaze landed on Gong Xue. Among all of them, she was the most unfamiliar with Gongsun Shui. She had never paid much attention to people who were not important to her. But now, because she was bored, her eyes were more focused. She noticed a touch of green in Gongsun Shui's eyes. Although it was very faint and others couldn't see it, she was trained in goo poison, so she could see it at a glance. She blinked. There was something wrong with this girl's body. Previously, she seemed to have heard from Qingyan that she quite liked this pure and innocent lady. Why not wait until the banquet was over and tell Qingyan about it? After all, she was someone who saved people based on her mood. If it was Qingyan's friend, she could lend a helping hand. Although Chu Qingyan knew that Tao Tao knew medicine, she didn't know what she was good at. With Ethereal and Yinluo taking care of her, she forgot about it. Xiao didn't know that Tao Tao's specialty was different from Ethereal and Yinluo. He didn't know if she could cure Gongsun Shui. Higashio Motetsu didn't know about Gongsun Shui's illness. So the person who could cure Gongsun Shui's illness was right in front of him, but he didn't know. At this time, Gongsun Shui felt someone's gaze on her. She looked in the direction of the gaze, but the other party had already retracted his gaze and was playing with the zither. Although Xiao was talking to Ethereal, his attention was on the ice beauty. She couldn't hide anything from him. He looked over and couldn't help but smile. That little girl is called Tao Tao. She's a friend that young Master Dongting brought over. She has a good relationship with my sister-in-law. If you like, I'll introduce her to you after the banquet. Gongsun Shui didn't have that intention, but since he said it, there was no harm in getting to know her. Anyway, after today, she and Xiao Yao wouldn't have such a leisurely time, so she went along with him. At the same time, as the host of today's banquet, Hualing straightened his clothes and walked up the stage. Everyone burst out laughing. They didn't expect Hualing, who wasn't afraid of anything, to be nervous. Hualing rubbed his nose. What was there to be afraid of about killing enemies and fighting monsters, but hosting a program was not the same thing. Before, he did not want to accept it no matter what, but with a single look from his master, he could only accept it with tears in his eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that the little princess had rehearsed for him, he might have already collapsed onto the ground. Life is like a play. It's fate that brings us together. Meeting is fate, and knowing each other is fate. Gentlemen, ladies, I'm very happy that everyone is gathered here to participate in today's banquet. I am a host, Hualing. Hualing recited all the lines the young princess gave him with his excellent memory. Although he stuttered in the beginning, he became much smoother towards the end. This was the first time a banquet could be held like this. There was even a host. It was quite refreshing to say that he was the host of the event. When Chu Qingyan clapped, everyone followed suit. Hualing gained confidence. He straightened his back and continued. Today's banquet is divided into several parts. The first is to reward, the second is to play, and the third is to eat. As the name suggests, there will be a talent show, interactive games, and delicious food. Eating, drinking, and playing were all available. Everyone's eyes lit up as they impatiently waited for Hualing to begin. All right, the first round will be the talent show. Let's welcome our first performer, Little Master and Kong, to perform a somersault. When Hualing finished speaking, other than Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su, everyone was very surprised. Little Kong was also going to perform. Because the program list was confidential, everyone only knew what they were going to perform. They didn't know what the others were going to perform. With this arrangement, it was even more surprising. Chu Qingyan swept her eyes over everyone present and laughed. Come, open your eyes. I'll let you all broaden your horizons and enjoy a modern ancient banquet. When little Kong heard the announcement, his eyes lit up. He immediately came down from his mother's embrace and said confidently, Daddy, Mommy, watch this baby show off his skills. After saying that, he walked with his short legs and prepared to climb up the stage. When Hualing saw this, he immediately carried the little devil king up. Chapter 1604. Before Xiao Ankong could perform, the crowd gave him a warm round of applause. After standing still, Xiao Ankong bowed to the crowd with his hands clasped in front of his chest. His dignified appearance made him look like a child of wealth, making him extremely likable. He first winked mischievously at his parents, then nodded at the drummer at the side. Soon, the sound of drums could be heard. Xiao Ankong was dressed in a neat outfit and was very relaxed. He nodded his head, supported himself with his hands, and somersaulted a few times, causing everyone to laugh and clap. Did they think that he only knew how to do this? He retreated to a corner and ran quickly. With both hands on the ground, he somersaulted 5 or 6 times in the air, then somersaulted 5 or 6 times in the reverse direction. His movements were very standard and very fast. It was impossible to tell that he was a 2-year-old child. After Xiao Ankong stabilized himself, the crowd burst into applause. As expected of my elder brother's child, he has the demeanor he had back then. Xiao Yao clapped happily. Gongsun Shui, who was sitting at the side, watched as Xiao Ankong bowed to the crowd gracefully, then jumped off the stage and happily pounced on his father, Xiao Su. Chu Qingyan and her husband were not stingy with their praises for him. She had never seen a child of a master perform on stage for others. Furthermore, there were so many servants present. However, not only did everyone support him, they also sincerely encouraged him. Xiao Ankong was very well educated, which surprised her. However, the crowd's reaction in this banquet surprised her even more. She had attended many banquets, but she had never been so lively and relaxed. These people really made people want to get close to them. Xiao Yao did not see any movement from the person beside him, so he turned his head in confusion. However, He saw the nostalgia in the Ice Beauty's eyes. He could not help but narrow his eyes. Why would the Ice Beauty have such emotions? At this time, the Emperor Emeritus and Father Chu went on stage. The two of them were performing a monkey show. What was a monkey show? It was similar to Sun Wukong's stick trick. The two of them were especially good at imitating. Coupled with their tacit understanding over the years, their cooperation was flawless, making everyone laugh. They were simply clowns. In order to support his imperial grandfather, Xiao temporarily put his doubts to the back of his mind. He would ask her about it later. It was Ethereal's turn. He used a bamboo leaf that he had casually plucked to play a tune. Just like his name, Ethereal. Next, it was Yin Luo's turn. She brought a basket of herbs onto the stage. I'm not good at martial arts, so I won't embarrass myself. I'm also not good at playing musical instruments. However, I have a basket of herbs here. If you can determine their effects based on the information I've provided, you'll receive a healing medicine I've prepared for the winner. However, for the sake of fairness, the medical students present are not allowed to participate. This rule was clearly targeted at Ethereal to prevent others from saying that she was biased. Little did he know that Cao Cao had also silently forfeited. Everyone was very excited to be able to guess and win a prize. In the end, Higashio Motetsu, retired emperor, and Xiao Yao each guessed one possibility and each received a bottle of healing medicine. Xiao Yao felt that he had no use for it. After receiving it, he stuffed it to the Ice Beauty beside him. Keep it to protect yourself. Yin Luo's medicine is hard to buy outside. The Ice Beauty opened the bottle and sniffed it. Surprise appeared on her face. Although she didn't know much about medicine, she was used to dealing with these kinds of medicine. She could tell whether it was good or bad with just a sniff. This bottle of medicine was probably something that even the best Chinese medicine practitioner around her couldn't develop. She looked at Cheng Yinluo, who was calmly walking down the stage, and then looked at the other two winners. It seemed that everyone was used to her medicine. She realized that she was becoming more and more fussy after being with them. She couldn't help but silently close the bottle and put in her sleeve. It was almost Cao Cao's turn. She stuffed her guqin into the arms of the person beside her. I'm not playing. Higashio Motetsu was admiring the sword dance on the stage when a guqin suddenly appeared in his arms. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and tease her out of habit. What's wrong? Do you think your guqin sounds as bad as a crow's? Cao Cao puffed up her cheeks. If you're willing to play with me, I'll play. Who said her guqin was bad? Her guqin skills were the most outstanding in the sect. He still had a smile on his face. Didn't I say that I don't know how to play? Why are you throwing a tantrum? Cao Cao took a deep breath, but she still couldn't calm the anger in her heart. I'm not throwing a tantrum. Then play with me once. Higashio Motetsu's expression dimmed. Cao Cao, I don't want to repeat it a third time. The anger in Cao Cao's heart finally dissipated. She knew that she might not be able to hear the sound of his flute in this lifetime. At this time, Hualing had already started announcing her program. Cao Cao stood up. Her long hair hung on both sides, covering her face. She laughed at herself. Since that was the case, she shouldn't pester him. This wasn't their sect style. Her guqin was still in his arms. Higashio Motetsu looked at the somewhat lonely figure. He felt a little regretful, but he didn't want her to use this method to prove her importance in his heart. Cao. When the words came out, he didn't know what to say. At this time, the disappointed girl in his eyes suddenly raised her head. The gloominess in her eyes was dispelled by the sunlight, and it was so bright that people didn't dare look straight at her. She tilted her head and revealed a brilliant smile. Higashio Motetsu, I'll dance for you. You have to watch carefully. He never thought that with her personality, it was already a surprise that she didn't fling her sleeves and leave. He never thought that she would even smile and say that she would dance for him. Watching her jump onto the stage, his mind was still filled with her dazzling smile from before. It was like the dark clouds had scattered, revealing a brilliant ray of light. Without any hindrance, it directly entered his heart. He reached out to his chest. There, it seemed to be beating irregularly. Cao Cao stood in the center of the stage and gracefully faced the crowd. Then she bent down and pulled off the cloth around her ankles, revealing a string of golden bells. When she stood up, the bells on her wrists were also revealed. With her movements, the clear sound of the bells rang out. Her eyes looked at the astonished Higashio Motetsu. The corners of her mouth slightly curved, but her eyes were slightly bitter. She, the little magic doctor, never prepared for both sides because she was a confident person. Since she left the sect, she had never failed again. But in front of this man, all her pride and confidence could only be put away. If he was a city, then she was a failure who had repeatedly attacked the city. In fact, she never expected that he would pick up the flute again. She raised her hand and made a dancing gesture. Higashio Motetsu, although I have always failed, I will try to conquer you again. One day, you will be my city, and I will be the only one who owns it. The bell rang and danced. Chapter 16:05. When she revealed the bells on her wrists and ankles, Higashio Motetsu finally understood that she already knew that he wouldn't play with her. That was why she had made other preparations, but he still disappointed her. He looked at the stage. She walked briskly, her graceful figure accompanied by the crisp sound of the bells. She spun and jumped. Her gaze never left him for every movement. Just as she said, she was dancing for him alone. There had never been a moment that made him feel so lost and his heart beat faster. Sister Tao Tao is dancing well. Xiao Ankang clapped his two chubby hands and smiled. Chu Qingyan looked at the graceful dance on the stage, then turned to look at Dong Ting's focused expression. Her eyes curved. This pair was really pleasing to the eye. The last performance was Xiao Yao. Gongsun Shui didn't expect him to have prepared a performance as well. She looked at him in surprise. Xiao Yao didn't go on stage immediately. Instead, he looked down at her with a happy smile. What do you like to hear? Gongsun Shui was a little confused. Wasn't the performance already decided? Why did he ask her now? Just do what you want. He found it quite interesting to tease her. At least her face was no longer so cold. The smile on his face widened. I'm just asking. Just listen to me. Don't take it seriously. Only then did Gongsun Shui realize that she had been fooled by him. She glared at him coldly. Xiao Yao immediately stopped when he was ahead. Otherwise, if he really provoked her, he would suffer. I'll go on stage first. I'm going to be late. With that, he quickly slipped away. Gongsun Shui snorted coldly, as if she was the one holding him up. Although Xiao Yao had slipped away, in the eyes of outsiders, he walked like flowing water, still looking carefree and unruly. The folding fan in his hand had disappeared and was replaced by a flute. He smiled brightly and held the flute to his lips. His gaze circled around the ice beauty's body. His fingers moved slightly and the sound of the flute flowed out. The melody was melodious and smooth, and one could even hear the sound of wild geese chirping. In the blink of an eye, it was clear and cheerful, as if there was a stream flowing in front of one's eyes. After a while, the sound was distant and vast, as if one was in an endless grassland with blue sky and white clouds, making one feel relaxed and happy. Gongsun Shui originally thought that this person was usually sloppy and didn't have any talent. At most, he was a little smart. She didn't expect him to have such superb skills. The sound that came out of the flute was mellow, sometimes light, sometimes distant, and sometimes high and sometimes low. It was like sitting on a clear winter day and watching the clouds. It made people feel at peace. When she was learning martial arts, her master had once told her that swordsmanship was the same, but different people could produce different sounds. This was related to the person's state of mind and character. From this, it could be seen that if one did not have a certain amount of experience and an open mind, one would not be able to produce such a beautiful sound. Her gaze was fixed on the person on the stage. A gentle breeze blew his clothes, and his hair danced in the wind. He raised his arms slightly, and there was a smile on his face. In his eyes, there was a vast green mountain, and in his tune, there were thousands of miles of flowing clouds. He stood alone in the world. The young man in green was like the wind, upright and capricious, as if he didn't stop for anyone. She still didn't know him well. How could such a person be as unconventional as he appeared? Just like what Chu Qingyan said, Everyone had a mask. What they showed was only the side they wanted others to see. Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind. If there was time, she wanted to dig out the other side of this man. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough time. Just as she was immersed in the melody, he came down and sat beside her. He didn't look like the young master Xiao just now at all. He asked, "How was it? Were you stunned by what you heard?" "I'm not boasting, but among our emperor, no, among our brothers, my playing is unrivaled." Xiao almost spilled the beans. He immediately corrected himself, but Gongsun Shui, who was in a trance, didn't notice. After a moment of silence, she praised, "It's very good." Xiao, who still wanted to boast and show off, was stunned by this praise. Soon, a bright smile appeared on his face, and it seemed like his smile was growing bigger and bigger. Gongsun Shui saw his silly appearance and couldn't help shaking her head. It seemed like she shouldn't praise him in the future. His tail was about to fly to the sky. Although Xiao was the last performer, when Hualing went on stage to prepare for the next segment, Father Chu became unhappy. "White impermanence. I want to see your performance." "Hurry, hurry, hurry." When his father-in-law said this, Xiao Su looked over. Hualing, who had received his master's silent order, wanted to cry. He only knew how to fight and kill. How could he know how to perform? But with his master and the old man looking at him like this, he couldn't back down. He could only agree. Hualing cupped his fists. "This one is untalented, so I'll show everyone a set of fist techniques." After saying this, he got into a horse stance and began to practice his fist techniques. In the blink of an eye, the person who had been smiling just now became serious. Every punch was powerful, and the sound of it breaking through the air could be heard. Gongsun Shui's attention was immediately drawn over. Her gaze instantly focused. From the way these people usually walked, she could tell that their martial arts weren't low. But she didn't expect that just a casual set of fist techniques would be so solid and profound. If these people were really opponents, then the Moon Clan was in danger. When this thought flashed through her mind, she couldn't help but tighten her grip. Previously, she had wanted to hide here for a while to avoid those assassins. However, after staying here for a long time, she realized that the guards here were all experts who were not inferior to her. She suddenly became curious about their identities. To be able to have so many experts as guards, these people must not be ordinary people. She had been in North Korea for so long, but she had never heard of any aristocratic family with such strong strength. She wanted to know more about them so that she could find out their identities. Little did she know that these people were all slippery loaches, and there were no signs that she could follow. Later on, she gave up. She couldn't do anything by herself, but she didn't expect that these people were actually involved with the Japanese. She had been too careless. She shouldn't have stayed here because of a moment of impulse. She should have gone back to take charge of the situation. At this time, Xiao saw that her expression was a little strange. He couldn't help but frown worriedly. "Are you feeling unwell? Is it a wound? Do you want Yin Luo to take a look?" Hearing Xiao's concerned and anxious tone, Gongsun Shui realized that she had revealed her emotions. Fortunately, this person didn't think too much. She shook her head and said calmly, "It's nothing. I was just thinking about something and got distracted. Let's continue watching." Xiao wanted to say something, but Hualing had already finished his fist and started the next segment. He couldn't help but purse his lips, and a complicated expression flashed through his eyes. Chapter 1606. This segment was an interactive game that was mainly about playing around. Although it was a game, no one present had ever heard of the way it was played. They couldn't help but express their curiosity and anticipation. The game's name was Gesticulating. The rules were that two people were in a team. One was responsible for gesticulating, while the other was responsible for guessing. Within the allotted time, the team that guessed more would win. Once Hualing finished explaining the rules, everyone was eager to try it out. Xiao wanted to pull the ice beauty onto the stage, but this time, the retired emperor came over and directly pulled him away. He cried out, "Grandfather, what are you looking for me for? Don't you have a partner?" The retired emperor waved his hand, and said with a smile. Chu Huayan went to find his wife. I'm the only one left. Everyone else is in pairs, so it's not good to separate them. So as my grandson, this is the best time for you to fulfill your filial piety. Xiao wanted to cry, but had no tears. My God, you didn't separate others, but ran over to separate your grandson. What kind of logic was this? But at this time, his imperial grandfather had already nimbly gone to Hualing to sign him up. What else could he say? He could only turn his head and cast an apologetic look at the ice beauty. When Gong Sunshua met his gaze, her expression was still without a ripple. But when she thought of how he couldn't resist when the old grandfather pulled him over, it was really funny. The game's segment began. The first group was Chung Yinluo and Ethereal. Hualing ordered someone to set up the hourglass. When the hourglass turned, the competition began. With many years of tacit understanding, Chung Yinluo and Ethereal completed 8 words in the allotted time. The two looked at each other and smiled. They happily stood on the other side of the stage, ready to watch the other's performance. The second group was the retired emperor and Xiao's turn. Xiao was pushed over to gesticulate. Before the competition began, the retired emperor waved his fist at him. Good grandson, be serious. I want to take the first prize. Xiao replied energetically. I know. The servant had already taken the board and written on it. When the competition began, he began to flip through the pages. The first was drinking wine. Xiao gestured with a cup. The retired emperor immediately said, Gem. Xiao shook his head and gestured with a drinking gesture. The retired emperor immediately said, sword swallowing. Everyone who knew the answer was amused. Xiao continued to shake his head. Then, he walked a few steps and swayed, indicating that he was drunk. At this time, the retired emperor somewhat understood. Drunk. Xiao immediately nodded and made a drinking gesture. The retired emperor said resolutely, drink. The second was dancing. The corners of Xiao's mouth twitched. What kind of question was this? He waved his hand and moved his legs. Retired emperor, exercise. He frowned and decided to go all out. Hence, he softened his movements and imitated Tao's dance moves. Retired emperor, epilepsy. Hoo-ha! Seeing this scene, everyone was about to burst out laughing. It was too funny. Below the stage, Gong Sunshua was also amused by Xiao's behavior. Her cold face cracked into a rare smile. Xiao originally wanted to give up, but when he saw the ice-cold beauty's rainbow-like smile, he couldn't help but think that if he could make her smile, he would be willing to do anything stupid. It was no wonder that King Yu of Zhou used a beacon fire to make her smile. Today, he was really obsessed, but he was willing to do it. In the end, the retired emperor still couldn't guess the answer. However, until the time was up, the grandfather and grandson still managed to answer 9 questions correctly. The result was very good. Finally, it was over. Xiao supported his waist. For the ice-cold beauty, for the game, he really went all out. I didn't expect my good grandson to be able to dance. It's a pity that your dancing is too difficult to compliment. Otherwise, Grandpa would definitely be able to guess it. When the two of them stood in the corner, retired emperor began to laugh and ridicule him. Xiao knew that his grandfather loved to tease him, but he didn't argue, because all his thoughts were on the ice-cold beauty. From the moment he started guessing, he realized that the ice-cold beauty was completely focused on the competition. It was obvious that she really liked this segment. When it was over, he would also play this game with her. He believed that with his strong body language and her intelligence, they would be very compatible. The third round was Father and Mother Chu. Father Chu gestured while Mother Chu guessed. Father Chu had always been a creative person, so one could imagine how ridiculous this round was. Everyone's eyes were firmly fixed on it. Chu Qingyan laughed until her stomach hurt. She felt that her father wasn't participating in a game, but was performing a skit. If there was a chance next time, she would personally arrange a few skits for everyone to laugh. The ice-cold beauty sat quietly, watching the fun on the stage. She was suspicious of these people. When Xing Yu came over yesterday, most of her guesses were confirmed. However, at this moment, when she looked at these people who had different personalities, loved each other, and got along well with each other, she felt that such a happy family without any scheming against each other wouldn't be involved in a power struggle at all. She wondered if their information was wrong. Thinking of this, she smiled slightly. Gongsun Shui, Gongsun Shui, are you deceiving yourself? Or are you trying to excuse them? When did you become like this? Just as the lively scene on the stage was in full swing, Gongsun Shui saw Xiao Feng waving at her while panting. She was afraid that Xiao Feng would be exposed, so she asked her to stay in the yard. She didn't expect her to appear here. Xiao Feng wouldn't be so flustered if it wasn't something serious. She immediately stopped smiling. Gongsun Shui said to the servant beside her, "If second master asks, just tell him that I'll be back soon." After saying that, she told the servant not to follow her and walked towards Xiao Feng. Because everyone was attracted by Father Chu's exaggerated gestures, no one noticed what happened here. No one knew when Gongsun Shui left. Xiao Feng rushed over as soon as she reached the corner. "What's the hurry? Did you forget what I taught you before?" Gongsun Shui was a bit displeased. Xiao Feng knew that she was being rash, but the situation was urgent, and she didn't have time to think. "Sectmaster, the high priest sent someone over just now to say that they've found the true identity of the Xiao family." Gongsun Shui's eyes narrowed, and she slowly clenched her fists in her sleeves. She tried to calm down. "Speak." Xiao Feng immediately said, "They're in cahoots with Murong Yunxian. Murong Yun's son fled to another country, and these people took him in. This time, they're here to help Murong Yunxian take revenge on our Yu family." Although she already guessed it, Gongsun Shui was still stunned when she heard such accurate news. The high priest said that since the Xiao family could raise Murong Yunxian to be so outstanding, they definitely aren't small fries. He wants you to leave immediately. Otherwise, if your identity is exposed, your life will be in danger, Xiao Feng said anxiously. "Is that so?" At this moment, a voice interrupted the conversation between the master and servant. The tone was very light, and it was impossible to tell whether the speaker was happy or angry. Xiao Feng immediately pulled out her dagger. "Who is it?" Before Gongsun Shui could recover from her shock, her eyes widened again when she heard the voice. However, when a man in a green robe with black hair appeared in front of her, she was completely speechless. Chapter 16:07. Why are you here?" Gongsun Shui looked at the person who appeared in front of her and pursed her lips. If she didn't calculate the time wrongly, he should still be on the stage watching the fourth team's competition. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come out to meet Xiao Feng so easily. However, she could calculate the time, but she couldn't calculate a person's heart. Because Xiao Yao's mind was on her, no matter how exciting the competition on the stage was, he still put half of his attention on her. So when she suddenly left the stage, he noticed it. Also, he saw Xiao Feng's figure and thought that something big had happened. He was worried and left the stage early. But he didn't expect that as soon as he arrived, he heard Xiao Feng's words that shocked him so much that he couldn't think. Xiao Yao stared at the person in front of him as if he wanted to see through her. Gongsun Shui also felt his gaze and mocked herself. She didn't expect that after hiding for so long, she still fell short. Xiao Feng didn't expect Xiao Yao to follow her. With the dagger in her hand and the words just now, she knew that she was exposed. So, she immediately moved in front of her sect master. As long as he came forward, she wouldn't be polite. Xiao Yao didn't look at Xiao Feng and didn't care about the sharp dagger pointed at him. He looked at Gongsun Shui with bright eyes and said slowly, "Sun Shui is your alias, right? Who are you?" Smiling was his normal state. It was as if no matter when, he couldn't be stopped from smiling. However, this was the first time she saw him without a smile on his face. It seemed a little distant and cold, as if she couldn't feel any warmth anymore. She closed her eyes and suppressed the chaotic emotions in her heart. When she opened her eyes again, she had already recovered her usual coldness. She said, "I'm Gongsun Shui, the leader of the Moon Clan and the sect master of the Moon Clan." Gongsun Shui. This name suddenly jumped out from his memory. Oh right, his royal brother once said that the sect master of the Moon Clan was called this name. Some time ago, she was assassinated and her whereabouts were unknown. He thought about how he saved her the moment they arrived in this town, and she avoided answering the identity of the assassins. It was as if the pearls scattered all over the ground suddenly had a string, stringing them together one by one. Finally, when they were complete, they formed a trap. A trap. So, you won't tell me where your family is? You won't let me avenge you or reveal any information about your identity? Xiao lowered his eyebrows and gave a self-deprecating smile. I should have thought of it. I should have thought of it. How could a girl be alone? How could a killer chase after you for no reason? If you didn't tell me, I wouldn't ask. I thought those were your taboos, and I shouldn't touch them. I didn't expect that it would end like this. My brother has reminded me so many times, but I chose to believe you and ignored those problems. In the end, he was talking to himself. Gong Su and Xue couldn't bear to see him like this. She looked at him apologetically. She had just raised her head when she saw him looking up. His eyes were distant and unfamiliar. Since you're hiding your identity, why are you still staying? The war between the Sun-Moon race and the Sun-Moon race has already broken out. What are you doing in our little temple instead of taking charge of the overall situation? We can't tolerate a great Buddha like you. The situation was still developing as she expected. Gongsun Xue pursed her lips and looked at him, unable to say a word. Let me answer for her. As soon as he finished speaking, another person appeared in the corner. My brother? Xiao looked at the person in front of him in surprise. Xiao Su looked at Xiao and raised his eyebrows. It was as if he was disdainful of Xiao's stupidity. As expected, the little guy was right. People in love generally had lower IQs. The reason why Sect Master Gongsun stayed was very simple. She was injured and needed treatment. Furthermore, the killers were still looking for her. She had lost contact with her subordinates, so it was the best choice for her to take refuge here. However, as the sect master of a race, her ability to read people's expressions is not weak. She noticed that we were different from the people of North Korea, so she began to suspect our identities. After Xiao Su finished speaking, he raised his eyebrows at Gongsun Xue. Sect Master Gongsun, am I right? Gongsun Xue's body stiffened. Although she hadn't seen this person much, he was able to guess her thoughts so clearly. He was indeed not simple. Gongsun Xue narrowed her eyes and looked at Xiao Su cautiously. That's right. But how did you guess? I don't think I've done anything out of line during this period. Xiao Su put his hands behind his back and said slowly, It's very simple. The timing of your appearance was too sensitive. Furthermore, Xiao is my younger brother. I have to be on guard against the people around him so that he won't be fooled. However, he was fooled in the end. Xiao's mouth twitched. Although he knew that his brother was concerned about him, he felt very embarrassed when he said that. At this time, Xiao Su continued, We found out that Sect Master Yue went missing at the same time as you met second brother. However, this doesn't mean anything. It could be a coincidence. However, when Ethereal was treating you, he noticed that your inner strength was very strong. Furthermore, from your clothes, it could be seen that your background is not ordinary. Later, what really made me suspicious was that you asked Xiao to take in a servant girl. Gongsun Xue didn't think that her mistake would be because of this. Actually, you've already noticed me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have paid attention to these things. It seemed that this person was just as she had expected. He was meticulous and as cunning as a wolf. You can say that. This was an instinct that had been accumulated over many years. However, Xiao Su wouldn't tell her this. If it wasn't for the fact that the little fellow thought highly of second brother and Gongsun Xue, he wouldn't have wasted so much time talking to her. At this time, after listening to the conversation between the two, Xiao had a general understanding of the situation. After being in the palace for so many years, as long as he used his brain a little, it was easy to understand. He originally thought that he had left behind all the scheming and fighting, but he didn't think that he would walk into it again. Moreover, it was when he was unprepared. He laughed lightly, but it didn't reach his eyes. His gaze shot towards the girl in front of him. So all this time, you've been using me? Using him to stay here and investigate. Using his affection for her as a cover. These words were like the scorching light of summer, making it impossible for her to hide. Gongsun Xue pursed her lips tightly but didn't know how to refute. She didn't think this way, but when she did, it was like this. Her silent agreement was no doubt an admission. Xiao Yao laughed lightly and wiped his face, as if to wipe away the defeat and discomfort in his heart. Unfortunately, he still didn't feel good in his heart. He opened his mouth to say something to Gongsun Shui, but at this time, a shout rang through the sky. Assassin! Chapter 1608. That voice came from the direction of the stage. Before the voice had even died away, Xiao Su's figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. Xiao Yao and Gongsun Shui looked at each other, then followed their royal brother and ran back. Qiu Feng heaved a sigh of relief. Xiao Su's aura was too strong, and she almost couldn't breathe. She immediately turned around and said, "Sect Master, let's leave while they're not here." Gongsun Shui heard the shouting and killing getting more and more intense. She frowned and said, "Let's go and take a look." Qiu Feng widened her eyes and shouted in disapproval, "Sect Master." Gongsun Shui turned her back to Qiu Feng and said in a low voice, "I can't leave now." After saying that, Gongsun Shui quickly went back the way she came. "But the High Priestess and the others are waiting outside." Qiu Feng muttered. She had no choice but to release the signal and follow. Xiao Su was the first to arrive. He kicked away the two killers who had just walked in front of the little fellow and hugged her to check if she was injured. Chu Qingyan squeezed his hand and shook her head. "I'm fine. Don't forget that my martial arts are not bad." Xiao Su heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the person in front of him could still joke. He naturally knew how good her martial arts were, but things were different now. She had a child in her belly, so she couldn't let her guard down. "Don't move. Leave the rest to me." Afraid that she wouldn't listen, he patted her head and added, "Don't be willful." Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue, indicating that she wouldn't make a move easily. Xiao Su was relieved. Xiao Kong was already in the retired emperor's arms. When he saw that his eldest grandson had returned, he immediately went over with a serious face. "Who are these people? Why are they attacking us for no reason? Could it be that Jean Xian's identity exposed us?" Xiao Su didn't answer. He looked at Xiao Yao, who was walking quickly towards him. He heard every word of what his royal grandfather said. He wanted to ask his royal brother about it, but when he turned around and met his royal brother's gaze, he immediately understood who these people were after. The smile on Xiao Yao's face disappeared. "Royal brother, what should we do?" Xiao Su smiled faintly. "What else can we do? They're already here. How can we let them bully us?" As soon as he said that, the fierce cavalry rushed forward and fought fiercely. Xiao Yao nodded and turned. He turned. When Gongsu and Shui returned to the stage, she saw that the crowd was fighting with a group of men in black. Those men looked familiar. Weren't they the men who had tried to kill her before? However, her gaze was quickly attracted by the green-robed figure. Out of so many people, she was able to see him at first glance. He didn't have any weapons. He used his fan as a blade and flipped it around. He shuttled through the crowd with ease and methodically reaped the lives of his opponents. He had a faint smile on his face, but it wasn't his usual arrogant smile, nor was it his usual gentle smile, nor was it a teasing smile. Instead, it was a cold smile that was mixed with the coldness of winter, causing people to feel a chill in their hearts. Looking at his smooth movements and killing moves, she suddenly understood why he didn't want to compete with her that day. He said that he wouldn't bully the little girl. She thought he was joking, but she didn't expect that it was true. His martial arts were not inferior to hers. At this moment, the two sides separated. "Who are you? Why are you trespassing?" Huo Ling asked with his sword in hand. The leader of the black-clothed men saw that his side had suffered heavy casualties, while the other side had light injuries. They were all in high spirits. The situation was not good for them. The leader of the black-clothed men stepped forward and said, "We only want one person today. As long as you don't make things difficult for us and let's take her away, we won't be enemies with you. You want to take someone away from us? Don't even think about it." Turin was by Jean Xian's side. He was in charge of mobilizing the fierce blade cavalry. Huo Ling was the only cavalry leader and spoke on behalf of the cavalry. The leader of the black-clothed men mocked, "Little brat, don't be too arrogant. Don't think that we don't know your identity and your relationship with Murong Yunxian is enough for us to get rid of you. If you don't want to take our kill order, then hand over the person and we won't bother you anymore. Xiao Yao played with the fan in his hand, and his smile was a bit annoying. You say it like you're the ones who have the upper hand. The winner takes all. Do you believe that if we fight for another hour, none of you will be able to escape? Compared to leaving behind a disaster, I'm more willing to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Although Xiao Yao was smiling, his last sentence carried a biting, cold wind, causing people to tremble with fear. Although they were facing enemies, those who knew Xiao Yao couldn't help looking at him. Did this fellow eat the wrong medicine? Why was he so agitated? Although the leader of the black-clothed men felt a bit guilty, when he thought of the task given to him by his superiors, he angrily shouted, "Where did this brat come from? I won't talk nonsense with you. Are you going to hand over the person or not? Let me give you a piece of advice. A strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. A wise man submits to circumstances. You're the brat. You scolded me, white impermanence, and even scolded me, little fan. Do you want me to beat you into an ugly monster?" Father Chu couldn't help but roll up his sleeves and rush out. Fortunately, Mother Chu had foreseen this and immediately pulled him back. Chu Qingyan stood beside Xiao Su as she raised her eyebrows and sneered. "You keep asking us to hand over the hostage. May I ask who you are after?" Before the leader of the black-clothed men could speak, a figure stood out. "They're after me. Miss Sun?" Chu Qingyan looked at the girl in white with surprise. The leader of the black-clothed men laughed, as if he had thought of something. He looked at the people present as if he was watching a good show. "Miss Sun? Haha, you've all been fooled by her. Shut up. You don't have the right to speak here." Xiao Yao reprimanded coldly. The leader of the black-clothed men looked at the fierce cavalry standing around him, but he didn't dare to speak. Cheng Yinluo and the rest looked at Xiao Yao and Gong Sunxue, but no one said anything. At this time, no one would embarrass their own family. Gong Sunxue didn't expect that Xiao Yao would still choose to protect her at this time. She suppressed all her emotions and turned around to face Chu Qingyan and the rest, saying slowly, "He's right. I lied to you. My surname is Gong Sun, and my name is Shui. I'm the current sect master of the Dim Moon sect. I'm indebted to you all for taking care of me these days and investigating your identities. I'm very sorry, but I don't regret it." These words caused a huge commotion. Everyone looked at each other. Jean Xian was fighting the enemy at the front lines, but the leader of the enemy was with them. It was like placing gunpowder beside them. However, after these days of interaction, they didn't know what to say. Gong Sunxue didn't seem to care about their reaction at all. She didn't look at Xiao Yao and turned to the leader of the black-clothed men, saying, "This has nothing to do with them. Don't make things difficult for them. I'll go with you." Chapter 1609. The leader originally thought that it was hopeless, but Gong Sun Shue's words instantly gave him confidence. He nodded without hesitation. "Okay." Just as Gong Sun Shue was about to step forward, a hand stopped her and pulled her back. "Don't even think about taking anyone away from us. I've never been so embarrassed before." Gong Sun Shue didn't expect him to suddenly protect her behind him. She was stunned for a moment. She was actually blocked by him. "Xiao Yao, I'm fine. Let me go with them." She subconsciously tugged at his sleeve. Xiao Yao didn't even turn his head. "Don't try to be brave. We'll deal with you later." This was the first time someone had scolded her for trying to be brave. In fact, she had already thought of a way out. Qin Yu had come to pass the message, which meant that the high priest and the others weren't far away. As long as she left the Xiao residence, the high priest and the others would know. At that time, Xiao Yao and the others wouldn't be implicated. But in front of her, Xiao Yao was like a mountain standing in front of her. It was as if he was blocking the wind and rain in front of her. For a moment, she couldn't refute him. He was already disappointed in her. If he knew her plan, he would probably be angrier and more disappointed. Chu Qingyan glanced at Big Eyes beside her. He stood by her side to protect her. He didn't care about anything else and left the situation to Xiao Yao. She suddenly understood and stood to the side to watch. Today, the second brother, and the Ice Beauty were the main characters. As spectators, they just had to do their part. The leader couldn't understand why Xiao would protect Gong's son Shui after being deceived. However, anyone who tried to stop his mission deserved to die. Brat, have you forgotten your identity? You and Murong Yunxian are acquaintances, so you should be her sworn enemy. What do you mean by protecting her today? Do you want to raise a tiger and invite calamity? Aren't you afraid that she'll turn against you? These words made Gong's son Shui clench her fists. However, the person standing in front of her was as still as a rock. The leader continued, his eyes flashing with hostility. Or do you plan to capture her and send her to the front line to give Murong Yunxian another bargaining chip? Gong's son Shui seemed to think of something. Her lips turned pale. She had lied to him and everyone. With their relationship with Murong Yunxian, they wouldn't let her go easily. Feeling the emotional fluctuations of the person behind him, Xiao laughed at himself. As expected, she didn't believe him. At this time, Xiao Su felt that he had given them enough time. He made a gesture with his cold eyes. There was no killing intent in them, but it was chilling. It's about time. Don't waste time talking nonsense with them. When Huo Ling and the others received the order and were about to make a move, there was a sudden rush of footsteps. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. Was there going to be more scenes? Dozens of people wearing blue and white clothes appeared in front of everyone. Needless to say, they were from the Moon Clan. The old man in the lead walked quickly towards Gong Sunshui with a pear blossom walking stick in his hand. He then bowed to Gong Sunshui and said, Lan Si is late. Please forgive me, Sect Master. I'll come back to receive my punishment after I've dealt with these assassins. After confirming that the other party wasn't the Ice Beauty's enemy, Xiao had already quietly retreated, revealing the person behind him. Gong Sunshui immediately helped High Priest Lan Si up and said, High Priest, please don't say that. You just came out of seclusion and you're already involved in this kind of thing. I'm very ashamed. Sect Master is in trouble. How can this old man stand by and watch? Lan Si immediately turned to look at the black-clothed leader. Your flowing cloud pavilion has guts. You actually dared to make a move on Sect Master. Although the other party had many people, the black-clothed leader wasn't afraid. He looked at the people on both sides and said with a smile, High Priest should know that our flowing cloud pavilion only recognizes money and not people. When we receive money, we'll help. However, we were careless this time and missed the chance to capture Sect Master Yu. We'll let you off this time. See you again. After speaking, the black-clothed leader waved his hand and brought everyone to retreat quickly. The black-clothed leader calculated that with the Xiao clan present, the Yu sect wouldn't make a move on him because they were worried that the Xiao clan would turn around and attack them. So if they didn't escape now, when would they? Once the black-clothed people retreated, only Xiao and the high priest were left on the scene. Unknowingly, the two sides had already become enemies. Huo Ling looked at the scene and asked softly, Master, what should we do? Listen to Second Master. Xiao Su took a chair and helped the little fellow to sit down. Then he also sat down to the side. His expression was indifferent, as if the situation in front of him was just a fight between two children. There wasn't anything interesting about it at all. Huo Ling let out an ah and scratched his head in confusion. Then he heard his master say gently to the little princess consort, This angle is the best for sunbathing. Master still had the mood to joke around at a time like this. And the worst thing was that the little princess consort actually nodded in agreement. When he heard his royal brother say that he had full control over the fierce cavalry, Xiao understood. From the start, when he faced off with the black-clothed leader, it was his royal brother who had intentionally facilitated it. Now, he was even giving him a chance to settle the matter between him and the Ice Beauty. But now that everyone was watching, how could he have a good talk with the Ice Beauty? You guys are in cahoots with Murong Yunxian. You guys actually want to take over our Yu clan's territory. What wishful thinking. When Xiao Tong said this angrily, Gong Sunshui knew that the window paper between her and Xiao that had not been broken yet was no longer there. She was the leader of the Yu clan, and he was Murong Yunxuan's man. At this moment, they were only opponents. This was the reason why she had refused to admit it when he had asked her if they were friends. Because she had already expected this moment to come. Destiny made fools of people. Everything was already set in stone. Xiao Yao opened his fan and smiled as usual. Your words are a bit unkind. Jin Xian, no, the Murong Yinxian you speak of was originally the future leader of the Sun Clan. If it wasn't for your Yu clan's despicable methods, the Sun Clan wouldn't have fallen into your hands. Speaking of which, who is the one who is trying to take over whose territory? Qing Yu sneered. The winner is king, the loser is a bandit. The Sun Clan didn't have the ability to protect their territory. Who can they blame? Xiao Yao's lips curled into a smile, like the brightest star in the sky. Oh, then according to your words, Murong Yunxian is just taking back what belongs to him. The winner is king, the loser is a bandit. Everyone is relying on their own abilities. How can you accuse us of being in cahoots? You can't just let the officials set fires and not let the common people light lamps. Who was Xiao Yao? He was known for his sophistry. With his silver tongue, he didn't have to worry about refuting the other party. Qing Yu and Xiao Tong were speechless. Even Lan Si, who disdained to talk to Xiao Yao, was so angry that her face turned green. Father Chu clapped his hands. Little fan, you're awesome. Cheng Yin Luo and the other smiled. Chapter 16:10. However, there were two people who couldn't laugh. One was Gongsun Shui, and the other was Xiao Yao himself. At a time like this, he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. No matter who Gongsun Shui was, he was the one who caused this. He couldn't let anyone insult his family. But by doing so, he would also hurt Gongsun Shui. This was what it meant to hurt one's enemy at the expense of one's own men. Gongsun Shui knew that he was telling the truth. She didn't participate in the battle back then, but she admitted that the previous sect master had made a lot of mistakes. However, as the leader of the Yu clan, she couldn't admit it even if she was wrong. She raised her hand to stop her subordinates and looked at Xiao Yao. Although he still looked carefree and cheerful, she could feel that his aura had changed. It was a powerful aura that came from a superior. It wasn't something an ordinary person had. Although she knew that he was related to Murong Yunxian, she didn't know his true identity. If he came from another country, he might not be from a noble family, but a royal family member. However, this wasn't the time to figure it out. She calmed herself down and said, "Let's talk." Xiao Yao's eyes darkened when he heard this. His gaze stopped at a plum tree not far away. He said lightly, "Talk about what? What else was there to talk about?" He laughed at himself silently in his heart. Gongsun Shui couldn't see his expression and didn't know what he was thinking. "Let us go. What are your conditions?" Xiao Tong couldn't help but mutter, "Sect Master, they're rebels. Why do we have to negotiate with them? At most, we'll fight them. I don't believe we can't beat them." Although they didn't have many people, they weren't any less than the Xiao clan. She didn't believe they couldn't subdue them. Qing Yu immediately covered her mouth and scolded softly. "Shut up. The sect master has her reasons. Don't interrupt. Didn't you see that the high priestess didn't say anything?" Xiao Tong wasn't the only one who didn't understand. Everyone else was as well. However, they chose to listen to the sect master's orders. The high priestess glanced at the fierce cavalry and then at her own people. She didn't need to fight to know that she was no match for them. These people were well-trained and had powerful martial arts. Even the Flowing Cloud Pavilion, who was known as the #1 assassin in North Korea, was no match for them. Clearly, the sect master had seen through it as well. Therefore, he chose to negotiate after assessing the situation. However, the current situation was obviously not in their favor. This was because they were in the Xiao clan's territory. Moreover, although the other party did not have many people, they were skilled. One of them was equivalent to 10 of them. If Xiao Yao was unwilling to negotiate, they had no choice but to fight to the death. No matter what, the sect leader could not fall into the hands of the Xiao clan. Otherwise, the Moon clan would really be finished. At this time, Higashio Motetsu crossed his arms and leaned against the table, laughing mockingly. "Can you shrimp soldiers and crab generals compare to the famous fierce cavalry? What an arrogant fool. Let's not talk about how many people you brought. Just based on your identities and the fact that this is the Sun Clan's territory, there are plenty of people who want your lives. So, don't be so arrogant. Read more books, practice more martial arts, and look in the mirror more often to see if your face is still there. Higashio Motetsu's words caused the Moon Clan's people's expressions to change. Ever since they unified North Korea more than 10 years ago, they had never received such blatant provocation. Chinyu was full of vigor. She drew her sword and charged forward. "Who do you think you are? Our sect master is speaking. There's no room for you to interrupt." After she said that, Gongsun Shui and the rest reacted. She was already in front of them, and it was too late to stop her. They probably didn't think that the usually calm Chinyu would have such an impulsive moment. However, Xiao Yao and the others didn't pay any attention to Chinyu's aggressive attack. It was as if they didn't see it at all. Higashio Motetsu smirked. He raised his leg and accidentally kicked Chinyu's abdomen. She flew out and landed heavily in front of Lan Si and the rest. "You overestimate yourself." His voice wasn't loud, but it spread throughout the entire courtyard and landed heavily on the hearts of Chinyu and the rest. Xiao Tong and Xiao Feng didn't have time to be shocked. They immediately went forward to help Chinyu up and check that he wasn't injured. Just a casual move was enough to send the leader of Gongsun Shui's personal guards flying. How terrifying was this person's martial arts? Gongsun Shui didn't expect that there were so many hidden talents in the Xiao family. Even Higashio Motetsu, who was usually sloppy, wasn't a simple character. Higashio Motetsu's kick was like a slap to their faces. They looked at each other and suddenly understood why the suzerain chose to negotiate instead of fighting. It was because they were no match for Chinyu at all. In fact, Higashio Motetsu felt wronged. He hated it when his friends were bullied. If it was before, he would definitely beat them until they vomited blood. However, Qingyan was pregnant. He didn't want to see blood, so he controlled his strength. If Qingyu knew the truth, she would probably vomit blood. Gongsun Shui immediately ordered people to take Qingyu away. She looked a bit pale. She cupped her hands and said to Xiao Yao and the rest, "It's my fault. Please forgive me." Hearing her formal words in distant tone, Xiao Yao's smile became more and more sarcastic. "It's okay." Chu Qingyan, who was watching from the side, poked her big ice block's arm and said softly, "Second brother should be very sad now." Xiao Su glanced at the people standing nearby and snorted. "He asked for it." Chu Qingyan shook her head. "You can't say that. He doesn't know where it came from." Xiao Su pinched her face and didn't say anything else. He probably agreed with her. At this moment, the negotiation was still going on. Gongsun Shui seemed to not see his smile and continued, "If you want money, just say it. We don't lack money." Xiao Yao shook his head. What a big tone. There shouldn't be anyone in this world who dared to say that they didn't lack money. However, thinking of what happened just now, the Serene Moon sect people still chose to keep quiet. "Then what do you want?" Lan Si narrowed her eyes and said in an unfriendly tone. Xiao Yao chuckled. "We never wanted anything. You're thinking too much. Don't use your power to bully others." Xiao Tong said hatefully. Xiao Yao laughed even more arrogantly. "If you want to use your power, you have to have power. Moreover, isn't it more appropriate for you to use these words?" Gongsun Shui, who had been calm all this while, saw that this person was still stubborn after saying so much. She couldn't help but feel anxious. "Xiao Yao, what do you want to do? If you're angry at me, don't take it out on others and make things difficult for them." At this time, Xiao Yao, who had not looked at her all this while, seemed to have some ripples in his eyes when he heard that. However, he suppressed it. When he met Gongsun Shui's gaze, there were no ripples. "You can leave." Chapter 16:11. The moment these words came out, the aggressive Tranquil Moon sect group was stunned. They all exchanged glances, not knowing how to react. Gongsun Shui was the same. "You're saying that you're letting us go?" She was uncertain. Xiao Yao chuckled. "That's right. We have no enmity with you. Why should we make things difficult for you?" Jin Xian. "Oh, no. Murong Yinshin you're talking about. When we let him do his thing, We said that we won't interfere with your politics. We're only here to have fun. The Tranquil Moon sect was somewhat dubious about this explanation. However, Gongsun Shui, who had interacted with them for a while, believed it. She looked at the person in front of her. But isn't Murong Yinxian your relative? Xiao chuckled. That's right. But that guy prefers to take revenge himself. Then, Miss Gongsun, we've never thought of hurting you. Whether we know your identity or not, we've already treated you as a friend. The conflict between the Sun and Moon clans has nothing to do with us. If there are no accidents, we won't interfere. So don't worry. Compared to scheming, we're more inclined to fight fairly. Chu Qingyin's clear voice sounded. Only then did the Dim Moon sect members notice the beautiful girl sitting at the back. Friend? This word struck Gongsun Shui's heart. She couldn't help but tremble slightly. She turned to look. Chu Qingyin was smiling kindly at her without any hostility. The Xiao clan was so powerful and had such strong support. They actually said that they wouldn't interfere with the politics of the Sun and Moon clans. Wan Si and the rest were delighted. So you can leave. After Xiao Yao finished speaking, Hualing ordered everyone to keep their weapons and leave. The door of the Xiao clan was also opened. It was as if they were really sending the guests away. Although I really want you to stay for our banquet, I don't think you're in a mood. So take care. Come and play when you're free. Chu Qingyin smiled and waved at Gongsun Shui. However, everyone knew that they would be strangers once they stepped out of this door. The relationship between the Sun and Moon clans was there. No one could cross it. Everyone, please. Hualing Jasper stood on both sides and extended her hand to politely invite them in. All of this was too unexpected. It was as if they had already prepared for the worst to face the flood and ferocious beasts. But the other party said that they were not here to take their lives, and even kindly let them pass. This was simply too surprising. Lan Si said to the silent Gongsun Shui, Sect leader, let's go. There's still many things waiting for you to deal with. Actually, he should be worried that the Xiao clan would go back on their word, so he should leave as soon as possible to avoid any more trouble. Gongsun Shui pursed her lips. When she looked at Xiao Yao again, the place where he had been standing was already empty. Her expression changed slightly. She looked around, but she only had time to see the corner of a blue robe fluttering in the wind. Then, the person had disappeared. After this incident, she and Xiao Yao might never meet again. She mocked herself in her heart and then bowed to the Xiao family. Thank you for taking care of me during this time. See you again. With that, she turned around resolutely and left with the Tranquil Moon Sex group. After exiting the Xiao family's door, Lan Si and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. Qiu Feng said with lingering fear, Sect leader, if the Xiao family really doesn't interfere, it will only be beneficial to us. While everyone was rejoicing, Gongsun Shui did not think so. If not for the fact that they thought that Murong Yinxian could take charge, the Xiao family would not have made such a promise so easily. Hence, Murong Yinxuan's side could not be underestimated. Gongsun Shui turned back to look at the Xiao family's mansion. Many scenes flashed past her mind. Finally, it stopped at the last moment when Xiao Yao looked at her. His clear eyes were filled with disappointment. Many complicated emotions surged in her heart. Let's go. Gongsun Shui left these words behind and strode forward, leaving the mansion behind her. Qiu Tong touched the back of her head. Why do I feel that sect leader's mood is very low? Qiu Feng, who had stayed in the Xiao family for a period of time, sighed faintly. She could not tell them that it was because sect leader felt guilty. Hence, she shut her mouth tightly, shook her head, and quickly followed. After the destruction, just now, the entire courtyard needed to be cleaned and tidied up. Hence, Chu Qingyin announced that the banquet would be temporarily suspended and would be held next time. As for the last segment of the banquet, the delicacies would be served at tonight's banquet. Then, she ordered Jasper to lead people to start cleaning up. Regarding today's incident, no one said anything. It was as if two groups of uninvited guests were just going through the motions. Hence, everyone returned to their own courtyards and looked forward to tonight's banquet. After everyone left, Chu Qingyin crossed her arms and looked at the person in front of her with a half smile. Seeing her interrogative look, Xiao Su quickly understood what she wanted to ask. Without waiting for her to speak, he took the initiative to confess. I have always suspected Gong Suinshue's identity. However, you were pregnant, so I did not tell you. I was worried that it would affect you and the child. I didn't think that she would be the sect leader of the Tranquil Moon sect. She was a little surprised. Actually, what her identity is has nothing to do with us. It's just that she provoked second brother. Xiao Su's tone was filled with dissatisfaction. Big Ice Cube was indeed protective. Clearly, it was second brother who provoked her, okay? So, you left for a while just now because of this matter? She did not even notice that someone had left just now. Xiao Su did not deny it. He had already sent people to keep an eye on her. Hence, when she informed the outside world, he already knew. Chu Qingyin thought that it was just as she had expected. Big Ice Cube had grown up in scheming and fighting, so he had his own set of judgment standards. Hence, it was normal that he was sharper than others. However, she touched her chin. There were so many obvious details. If it was in the past, she would definitely have noticed it. However, she did not notice anything now. She had to admit that pregnancy made one dumb for 3 years. She held his hand and looked worried. But I'm a bit worried about second brother. Although he didn't say anything, I can feel that he is very sad. In the past few years, she had spent time with Xiao Yao and found that he was an optimistic and carefree person. She rarely saw him worry about anything, but she also rarely saw him care about anything. He was only interested in everything for a short period of time, and there were no girls around him. However, ever since Gong Suinshue appeared, he had changed completely. Although he was still the same person, he seemed to have become more persistent and lived a more vivid life. Xiao Su also thought of this and said calmly, "As a man, there are some things that you have to learn to bear and accept by yourself." Chu Qingyin rolled her eyes at him. "That's easy for you to say. If I had lied to you, used you, and abandoned you in the end, let's see if you would still say that." Xiao Su narrowed his eyes and pulled her into his arms. He said in a dangerous tone, "Don't you dare." Chu Qingyin jumped into his arms and was overjoyed. See, no one would be able to stand it. Chapter 16:12. The banquet began. The few of them gathered around a table, and good wine and delicacies were served one after another. These were all made by the chef after Chu Qingyin's description. Every dish was exquisite and novel, unheard of and unseen. For example, small cakes, chicken rolls, Buddha jumps over the wall, hamburgers, pizzas, and other modern Chinese and Western dishes. The wine was made by Chu Qingyin's own shop. When she left the Sichuan, she brought several pots with her. Now they were put to good use. The night sky was dotted with stars. The crescent moon hung high in the sky. The stove was burning, and the room was warm. Just like the saying, "A beautiful scene on a good day was a pleasure to the heart." However, after today's incident, everyone present couldn't help but worry about Xiao Yao. After all, he was deceived and provoked. It was a big blow. However, while everyone was worried about Xiao Yao, he was as usual, laughing and joking as if nothing had changed. "Good wine." Xiao Yao drank it in one gulp and poured himself another cup. Chu Qingyin watched him drink half a pot and couldn't help but raise her brows. "Second brother, are you drowning your sorrows with wine?" Xiao Yao was stunned, then smiled and showed his white teeth. "How could that be? If not for the wine that Imperial brother gave me last time, I wouldn't have coveted it for so long." These words didn't seem to be a lie. Chu Qingyin smiled gently. "All right, seeing that you admire my wine so much, when we go back, I'll have someone send 30 pots to your residence. I'll also instruct them to send it to you as long as you want to drink it." Xiao Yao's eyes lit up, and he said sweetly, "I knew that Imperial sister-in-law is the best. If there's anything in the future, just say the word and this subject brother will be at your beck and call, even if it means risking my life. It's just a few pots of wine. You're selling yourself like this. It's not worth it." Chu Qingyin saw that he was playing tricks and couldn't help but shake her head in amusement. "I don't have any other requests. I just hope that you can be at ease and live happily every day." Xiao Yao's hand, which was holding the wine jug, paused. Then he said casually, "Sister-in-law, I know what you're thinking. I also know that you're concerned about me. It's okay. I'm fine. Anyway, it's not like I haven't been cheated before. I'll get used to it." As he spoke, he casually tossed the cup aside, then picked up the wine jug and poured it into his mouth, as if he was afraid that someone would snatch it from him. Chu Qingyan saw that Jiang Yi was the same as before, and there was nothing wrong with him. However, no one noticed the redness in Xiao Yao's eyes. This grape wine was also the Emperor Emeritus and Father Chu's favorite. They were fighting over it. If it weren't for someone stopping them, the two of them would have started fighting again. Chu Machen's father drank in a hurry and was soon drunk. Chu Machen's mother helped him leave the table. The retired emperor had no one to accompany him, so he was a little bored. When he saw his second grandson, he immediately ran over. "Second brother, come, let's have a toast." Xiao Yao didn't refuse any of them. Ethereal was already drunk with him, so Cheng Yin Luo dragged him away by the ear. However, the person in front of him was his imperial grandfather, so it was a different story. "Imperial grandfather, don't drink so much. It's not good to get drunk." The retired emperor glared at him. "What? Are you looking down on your imperial grandfather? Back in the day, I didn't get drunk even after 1,000 cups. No one has ever been able to outdrink me." Xiao Yao didn't want to tell him the truth, but it was because he used to be the ruler of a nation. Who would dare to outdo him? "All right, I'll drink with you." Only then did the retired emperor pat his shoulder in satisfaction. He filled his cup with wine and said, "Come, cheers." The two of them clinked their cups and downed the wine in one gulp. The retired emperor wiped the wine stains on his face, and his expression suddenly became serious. He patted his grandson's arm and said earnestly, "Second brother, although you're not young anymore, and your imperial brother and third brother are married and have families, there's no need to be anxious. If your conditions are revealed, I guarantee that your doorstep will be trampled over, so there's no need to hang yourself on a crooked tree. Although that tree is growing quite well, there's plenty of other fish in the sea. What's yours will be yours sooner or later. Perhaps your fate hasn't arrived yet, so there's no need to be anxious." Xiao Yao was stunned. The wine in his cup immediately overflowed. Seeing this, the retired emperor's heart ached, and he snatched the wine jug away. "Imperial grandfather, you're thinking too much. I'm not anxious at all." The retired emperor hugged the wine jug and looked at him in disbelief. "Thinking too much? I think you're the one who's thinking too much. She's so cold that she doesn't even care about you, but you're trying so hard to get close to her. You're a disgrace to our imperial family." Xiao Yao's expression changed slightly. "Imperial grandfather, I don't have that kind of interest in her." The retired emperor gave a cold humph. "You know very well whether you do or not." Xiao Yao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Imperial grandfather, do you think I'm sad right now? I don't think so. It's not like you don't know me. I've walked through a field of 10,000 flowers, but not a single leaf stains my body. To me, marriage and love aren't as important as a jug of wine." Hearing this, the Emperor Emeritus looked at him suspiciously. "Really? You're not trying to fool grandfather? Really?" Xiao Yao revealed an especially sincere expression. The retired emperor couldn't tell if it was true or false, so he simply didn't bother to distinguish. He once again said earnestly, "Grandson, imperial grandfather hopes that what you're saying is true and not a forced smile. In order to comfort grandfather, you're deceiving yourself. In life, we pay attention to the word fate. Come if you're compatible, leave if you're incompatible. Your life is still long, so don't stop moving forward just because of a small encounter. Work hard to look forward. Perhaps the person you like, and the person who also likes you, is right in front of you." After saying this, leaving Xiao Yao in a daze, the retired emperor stealthily took the 2 jugs of wine behind him, and then slipped away. When Xiao Yao came back to his senses, the retired emperor was already nowhere to be seen. He held his forehead, shook his head, and finally laughed. His laughter was 3 parts drunken and 7 parts bitter. He picked up the jug of wine and downed it. He didn't know how long he drank, but when he put down the empty jug in his hand, he was already staggering. He shook his head. His alcohol tolerance was really poor. Taking the remaining jug of wine, he staggered out of the courtyard and walked towards the courtyard where Gong Sun Shua used to live. Because of the wine, his usually clear eyes were very bright. He stood in the courtyard and didn't enter the house. He glanced at the furnishings around him and finally leaped onto a tall tree in the courtyard. He leaned his shoulders against the tree trunk and sat on it. He raised his head and continued to drink. The more he drank, the brighter his eyes became, as if they were washed by water. He had drunk more than his usual limit tonight, but he didn't feel sleepy at all. He wiped his face, shook the empty jug in his hand, and shook his head with a self-deprecating smile. He put the empty jug aside and lay on the tree branch, looking at the bright moon in the sky. He remembered what the ice beauty had asked him today. Xiao, what do you want to do? If you're angry with me, don't take it out on others and make things difficult for them. How could he be angry with her? What right did he have to be angry with her? Didn't he ask for it himself? Even his imperial grandfather said that he was shameless enough to get close to her, so how could he blame anyone else? He raised his hand to cover his eyes and silently curved his lips. Don't say that a man's heart is as hard as iron. Don't you see the red leaves of a river full of tears? Chapter 16:13. Time flew by like an arrow. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. News from the front lines came one after another. Jean Xian had taken back all the cities of the Sun Clan and chased the people of the US sect out. Now, the Sunflame sect had become the protector of the Sun Clan again. However, the Sun Clan and the Moon Clan were fighting as equals. Jean Xian still had many things to deal with and would get busier. These news were all sent back by Turin. Chu Qingyan was relieved when she received the news. She believed in Jean Xian's ability. With the help of Turin, Sima, and Ji Linyang, he would definitely take back what belonged to him and return peace to the people. However, she was still worried. But now, she was completely relieved. However, she realized that the big ice cube was not as happy as she was after reading the news. She could not help but ask, "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Xiao Su frowned slightly. The letter said that when there were only 2 cities left, the other party abandoned the cities without fighting. Chu Qingyan blinked. "I don't think there's a problem. Maybe the other party felt that they couldn't win and abandoned the cities. This is a victory without fighting. We didn't lose anything and took back the cities. Isn't that good?" Xiao Su felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He lowered his head and saw the baby's slightly bulging belly, so he put the matter aside for the time being. Anyway, Jin Xin had already achieved his original goal, so the process wasn't important. He raised his hand to touch her lower abdomen and asked gently, "Did it bother you today?" Chu Qingyan's attention immediately turned to the baby in her belly. When she heard his question, she said sadly, "It was very noisy. I even threw up what I ate this morning." Xiao Su looked at the little one's face carefully. It was a little pale. He reached out and touched her face. He said tenderly, "When it's born, I will teach it a lesson." Then, he said, "I'll get the kitchen to cook some millet porridge for you. Eat some." She reached out and hugged his waist. She leaned her head against his chest and nodded obediently. Ever since she got pregnant, other than being sleepy, she had been particularly clingy to him. She was even more clingy than their son was back then. Sometimes, she even wondered if she was being too pretentious. But if she thought about it from another perspective, perhaps the baby in her stomach wanted a father. Thinking of this, she felt relieved and became even more clingy. However, he was happy to see this change in the little fellow. He couldn't wait for her to be under his watch 24 hours a day. However, there was one thing that gave him a headache. Yin Luo said that pregnant women would definitely like strange things. However, the last time she was pregnant with Kong, the little guy's taste was still normal. But this time, it was a little strange. Recently, the little guy didn't like spicy food. Moreover, he often hugged sour plums to eat. This way of eating was simply too scary. However, he didn't listen to her. Every time he wanted to take away her dishes and change them to something lighter, she would look at him pitifully. When he wanted to take away her hidden snacks, such as sour plums and hawthorn, she would look at him pitifully again. She didn't need to say anything. As long as she pouted and looked at him with curved eyes, his heart would soften. In the end, he could only reduce the amount each time. People said that it was sour and spicy, but when it came to him, it didn't work. He couldn't tell whether his little fellow was pregnant with a boy or a girl. Xiao peeled a grape and brought it to her lips. She obediently opened her mouth and ate it. He continued to peel the next one calmly. In her eyes, it was as if he wasn't peeling grapes, but wiping his sword, because his expression was very serious, so serious that it was fascinating. Big Ice Cube, do you think it's a boy or a girl? She lay in his arms and asked. It's good whether it's a boy or a girl. He peeled the grapes seriously. Why? I thought you want a girl. She spat out the grape seed and asked curiously. Xiao stopped what he was doing and looked at her with a faint smile in his eyes. As long as it's your child, it's good. But no matter if it was a boy or a girl, as long as it was the little fellow's child, he would like it. Chu Qingyan felt that this person was getting better and better at saying sweet nothings. She smiled shyly and hugged his waist. Big Ice Cube is the best. But if it's a boy, Kong Kong will have someone to practice martial arts with in the future. If it's a girl, with Kong Kong's protection, she will definitely live a carefree life. Xiao smiled slightly. That was natural. He would naturally arrange for their child to be together. A few days ago, I received a letter from Xijing. Only then did I know that she had given birth to a girl. If not for the fact that we are related by blood, I would really want to marry her off. Chu Qingyan rubbed her chin and said regretfully. Xiao eyebrows twitched slightly. He didn't expect the little fellow to have such thoughts. Kong Kong is still young. There's no rush. However, the person in his arms didn't listen to him. Her eyes suddenly lit up. All right, aren't Sima and young Master Ji already married? If they have a girl, let's make her Kong Kong's wife in advance, okay? Looking at his wife's sparkling eyes, Xiao felt a little pressured. Their relationship should be mutual love. It's not very good to arrange a marriage before they are born. Chu Qingyan waved her hand and said disapprovingly, Look at how handsome Sima and young Master Ji are. The combination of beauty and handsomeness will definitely give birth to a child who will surpass the master. So the child will definitely be very cute and beautiful. Moreover, half of the child's IQ comes from its parents. Sima and young Master Ji are so smart, so the child won't be bad. In this way, want to be a good match for Kong Kong? She had already imagined a scene of a golden boy and a jade girl being childhood sweethearts. Xiao was very helpless against his wife's wild imagination. However, as long as his wife was happy, she could do whatever she wanted. He didn't object. Kong Kong sneezed as he played. He was completely unaware that his parents had sold him. Jasper immediately went into the room to get a cloak for her little master, afraid that he would catch a cold again. It was rare that Chu Qingyan didn't feel sleepy after lunch, so Xiao took her to the courtyard for a walk. All right, what has Water Spirit been doing recently? It seems that we haven't heard from her for more than a month. Xiao supported her waist and said, Let her help Jean Xian. She should be in the Yu clan's territory now. As soon as he said that, the two saw Hualing hurriedly run over. Master, young princess consort, Water Spirit is back. Water Spirit is back. Chu Qingyan looked at the person beside her in confusion. Wasn't she in the Yu clan's territory now? Why did she come back? Xiao was also puzzled. He asked Hualing, where is she now? In the main hall. Hualing's expression was a bit anxious. Master, you didn't see how Water Spirit looked when she came back. She looked like she had lost her soul. After so many years, I've never seen her in such a sorry state. Chu Qingyan and Xiao looked at each other and walked towards the main hall without another word. Chapter 16:14. Xiao and Chu Qingyan rushed to the main hall and saw Water Spirit standing there as if she had lost all her luster. She didn't seem to have a soul, just like an empty shell. She didn't even notice that they had entered. They had never seen Water Spirit like this before. Chu Qingyan quickly walked over and reached out to hold Water Spirit's hand. She looked at her lifeless eyes with heartache. Water Spirit, What happened? Tell us, your master, and I will make a decision for you. At this time, Water Spirit finally sensed their arrival. She looked at Chu Qingyan in a daze, and then reached out to hug her, crying out, "Little princess consort," woo, the tears that she had been holding back the entire way finally came out at this moment. Water Spirit cried her heart out, as if she wanted to cry out all the pain she had suffered for the past 10 years. No one knew what happened to her, but just hearing her voice, they couldn't help being moved. Chu Qingyan was tightly hugged by her, as if she was a piece of driftwood. She couldn't help reaching out to hug her back, gently patting her back as she softly said, "Don't be afraid, cry all you want. We're all here, we won't let you be bullied. Little princess consort, he's not dead, he's not dead. Woo-woo, it's been 10 years, it's been 10 years." She kept mumbling incoherently. Chu Qingyan was the closest to her, and when she heard what she said clearly, she felt the person in her arms go limp and fall to the ground. She hurriedly supported her. Someone, ethereal, heard that Water Spirit had fainted and immediately rushed over. She took her pulse and thought that she was seriously injured, but the result was she fainted because of excessive exhaustion and emotional fluctuations. After listening to Kong Ling's diagnosis, everyone looked at each other. According to Shui Ling's temperament, it was impossible for her to cry until she fainted. What was going on here? Just now, her subordinate said that she hasn't rested for 3 days and 3 nights. Huling came back from downstairs and told everyone about this. Ever since Feng Ling passed away, we haven't seen Water Spirit act so abnormally. Ethereal looked at Water Spirit on the bed and gave a faint sigh. Once Feng Ling was mentioned, Xiao Lai Chi and the others fell silent. Feng Ling's death had always been a scar in their hearts that was hard to erase. Chu Qingyan at this time, she suddenly remembered what Water Spirit had said when she hugged her and cried. She kept mumbling, "He's not dead. It's been 10 years. Feng Ling zest. Did she say he wasn't dead? But we still haven't found his corpse." Huling immediately added. The two looked at each other before looking at their master, who had been silent the entire time. Xiao Su's eyes were heavy. "We'll know when Water Spirit wakes up." Everyone was dejected. It was useless for them to make wild guesses here. Water Spirit did not sleep well. Her brows were furrowed as she muttered. In the end, she shouted something and woke up. Everyone wanted to let her rest first and prepare to leave, but because of her shout, they pulled back their feet. "Shui Ling, what's going on?" Shui Ling was still sitting on her bed in a state of shock when she suddenly heard a reassuring voice. Turning her head to look at her master, little princess, and all her companions who were all worried about her, she couldn't help bursting into tears again, but this time she was happy. "Master, Feng Ling isn't dead. He's in North Korea." These words were like a bomb that caught everyone off guard. After a while, Water Spirit changed her clothes and reappeared in front of everyone. Xiao Su sat at the head of the table and asked calmly, "Tell me about this matter." Shui Ling nodded. After more than half an hour of rest, her complexion had improved a lot and was no longer as pale as before. A month ago, this subordinate accompanied Jean Xin to the Yu clan to investigate. However, in a small alley, this subordinate saw an old beggar with a string of wind chimes in his hand. As she spoke, she pulled out a string of wind chimes from her sleeve. They had been rubbed so hard that they had almost lost their color. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she forced them to not fall. "This looks like an ordinary wind chime. What does it have to do with Feng Ling?" Chung Yinluo looked at the string of wind chimes seriously and asked in confusion. Meanwhile, Ethereal seemed to have thought of something. "I remember that Feng Ling used to like making small things like this for you. Could this be?" Upon hearing this, Water Spirit's eyes reddened even more. "Yes, this was made by Feng Ling. This string of wind chimes was a token of our love back then. It was also consecrated at the temple to ensure our safety. There used to be a pair, but he broke them all on a mission. Before the battle at Ci Shui's slope, I gave him mine. His original one had the word water, mine had the word wind, and she flipped open the bell at the bottom and showed it to everyone. And this Feng Ling has the word wind below it. Needless to say, This wind chime was the one that Feng Ling had with him back then. Everyone was delighted. Could it be that Feng Ling is really still alive? Water Spirit nodded. I thought so too, but, however, no one knew how this string of wind chimes had traveled from Sichuan to North Korea, which was so far away. Xiao Su suddenly spoke. What did you find out from that old beggar? Water Spirit fell silent, her expression very disappointed. Nothing. The old beggar said that he picked it up in the capital, but the wind chimes were covered in blood. However, it had already dried up. He spent a lot of effort to wash it off. He originally wanted to pawn it, but no pawn shop was willing to accept it, so he kept it with him. Then what did you do in this month? Xiao Su continued. Water Spirit continued to shake her head. I searched for a month, but I didn't find any news. Because of her words, everyone's surprise from just now instantly cooled down. This string of wind chimes did not mean that the wind spirit was still alive. It was also possible that the people of North Korea had picked it up when they passed by Sisui Slope and brought it here. If Feng Ling was still alive, he would definitely think of a way to come back and not spend 10 years like this. However, back then, Feng Ling had died without a corpse. This made Huo Ling and the others feel a bit lucky. Huo Ling could not help but take a step forward and ask, Master, do you think Feng Ling is still alive? Xiao Su furrowed his brows, obviously thinking about this matter. At this time, Water Spirit suddenly knelt down. She raised her head and her eyes were filled with tears. Her originally small face had become even smaller because of this month's hard work. Her pleading eyes were filled with tears, making her look even more pitiful. She placed her hands on the ground and kowtowed as she pleaded. Master, Feng Ling must still be alive. Let's go find him, all right? After all these years, who knows how much he has suffered? Let's go find him and bring him back. I beg you. Chapter 16:15. Water Spirit cried until her shoulders trembled, but she still kowtowed again and again. For so many years, she thought day and night, thinking that she could only see Huang Quan again. But the heavens pitied her and gave her a glimmer of hope. Even if she had to sacrifice her life, she was not willing to give up. Chu Qingyan looked at the peerless beauty, who was crying like rain, and could not help but feel sad. If Feng Ling was still alive, that would be great. But if Feng Ling was still alive, then in these 10 years, he had not contacted Xiao Mount. There were only a few possibilities. For example, he had lost his memory, or he was being held hostage. In other words, he was not free. Because she believed that a person nurtured by Big Ice Cube would not do such a foolish thing. But if this was just drawing water with a bamboo basket, then what would Water Spirit do? The most tragic thing in the world was nothing more than giving people hope when they were in despair, letting them experience the heart-wrenching despair once again. At this time, Xiao Su stood up and walked in front of Water Spirit. He bent down and helped her up, sighing softly. Feng Ling is the most outstanding Mount Master that I have nurtured. That year when he died, C.I. Shui's slope with blood, it has always been a knot in my heart. Now that there is news of him, how can I just sit and wait for death? Water Spirit looked up in a daze. Master means thoroughly investigate what happened that year. Regardless of whether Feng Ling is dead or alive, I will give you an answer. Xiao Su retracted his hand, his eyes filled with relief. Water Spirit nodded heavily, her voice hoarse with gratitude. Thank you, Master. Ethereal and Huo Ling also knelt down in surprise. Thank you, Master. Chu Qingyan walked in front of Water Spirit, took up a handkerchief, and helped her wipe her tears, comforting her. Don't worry, your master wants to find Feng Ling more than you. So go and have a good rest first. If you don't eat and sleep well, how can you have the strength? After you recharge your energy, we will go with you to find him. Water Spirit could not help but hug her again. Thank you, little princess. Chu Qingyan stroked her back, her heart aching. Poor girl. After Water Spirit was helped down to rest, there were only Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su left. Chu Qingyan walked over and held Big Ice Cube's hand. Looking up, she was not surprised to see the sorrow in his eyes. Big Ice Cube, What happened at Shui's slope that year was not your fault. Who would have thought that they would be so cruel? She didn't forget the desolation and loneliness she felt when he faced those tombstones with his back to her before he left for war. Those were the subordinates he had personally trained, the brothers who had been through wind and fire with him. So many years had passed, but the big ice cube still seemed to be carrying shackles on his back as he moved forward with a heavy burden. It could be seen how important Feng Ling and the others were to the ice cube. She was big ice cube. If a person made a mistake, they could be punished according to the law and be imprisoned for a certain period of time. But for big ice cube, he had already condemned himself in his heart. No matter what he did, he could not atone for his crime, because he had sentenced himself to life imprisonment. The guilt he felt towards wind spirit and water spirit. These were the pain that big ice cube could not express to anyone. Xiao held her hand tightly, his voice uncertain. Ayan, we will find wind spirit, right? Chu Qingyin could not help but hug him from behind, trying to make her voice not sound so sad. Big ice cube, it's okay. If wind spirit is still alive, we will definitely find him. Wind spirit, if you're still alive, give us some news so that we can find you as soon as possible. This way, water spirit would truly be happy, and big ice cube would truly be able to let go of the chains in his heart. She hugged him tightly, wanting to pass her warmth to him. Xiao put his hands on the back of her hands and slowly closed his eyes. In a palace of the Moon Clan, Gongsun Shui held the latest information in her hands. Sectmaster, according to your orders, we put the evidence of the transaction with Flowing Cloud Pavilion in front of Elder Su, forcing him to reveal himself. As you expected, Elder Su betrayed us by supporting Gongsun Fei. Qing Yu's eyes shone with a golden light. Lan Si, who was standing at the side, harumphed heavily. This Su Yu is really a traitor. The old sect master treated him well and even let him marry his daughter to King Cheng. Since King Cheng died of illness, the old sect master was worried that Gongsun Fei would be bullied without him, so he put her by his side to cultivate. Who would have thought that these two ingrates would be so greedy as to collude with each other and attempt to usurp the throne? This is simply intolerable. High Priestess, don't be angry. It is not worth it to get angry over these ingrates. Qiao Tong hurriedly rubbed the High Priestess's shoulders to calm her down. Qiao Feng also advised from the side. Yes, High Priestess, the sect master already had a card up his sleeve to deal with these people. Otherwise, he would not have forced them to reveal their fox's tail. Now that they are desperate and have troops to protect themselves, although they have occupied half of the cities, they have shown their true colors. The people will no longer be deceived by them. Only then did Lan Si smile. He patted the children in front of him and was very gratified. Then, he turned to look at the silent Gongsun Shui and asked with confusion in his eyes, Sect Master, what do you think now? He had single-handedly raised this child. He knew how intelligent and determined she was, and how much pain and suffering she had gone through. However, after she had taken over the position of sect master, he had let her do as she pleased. He had not interfered much and had gone into seclusion. As a result, he was not very clear about what she was thinking and what she was planning to do. Gongsun Shui moved her shoulders and turned to look at the few pairs of sparkling eyes. Her eyes darkened, and she said to Lan Si, High Priestess, since my father's death, the position of sect master has been empty for nearly 10 years. It has always been Su Yu who has monopolized it. Although you fought against him and preserved some power for me, when I took over the position of sect master, although I suppressed his power and made him restrain himself in these few years, he has secretly cultivated elite secret guards and courtiers. From this rebellion, it can be seen that the speed at which he took over half of the cities is astonishing. He took most of his men and left the capital to be on the same side as us, leaving many positions empty in the court. This is the problem he has left for us. He wants to see us make a fool of ourselves, and whether we will panic because of his absence. However, it is not as if I have not done anything since I took over. I have also gathered a group of talents, one radish and one pit. I want to nurture these talents to fill these positions so that the court can operate normally. Gongsun Xue's words made Lan Si heave a big sigh of relief. A smile appeared on his lips. This old man knew that you would not disappoint. Gongsun Xue smiled faintly, but her expression quickly returned to seriousness. But we still cannot let down our guard. So many people have left at once. This is a serious blow to the Yu clan. Therefore, during this period of time, we must raise our attention to deal with whatever may happen next. Chapter 16:16. Gong Sunshue's words made everyone stop laughing. This was just the beginning. The real battle had yet to come. Everyone left immediately after receiving the order. Only Gong Sunshue and Lan Si were left in the meeting room. It was a little empty. Girl, do you have other thoughts? When no one else was around, the high priest would call her girl. It was as if she had returned to her childhood. She did not deny it, but she did not answer the high priest's question immediately. Instead, she talked about something else. High priest, have you been happy these years? This completely unrelated question stunned Lan Si. The child in front of him had always had a firm heart and only cared about the matters of the clan. According to his original temperament, it was impossible for him to ask such a sentimental question, but he still answered after serious consideration. As the high priest, I have a responsibility of protecting the clan. I have lived up to this position all these years. My heart is at ease. Gong Sunshue shook her head. Asked if you were happy, and your answer was at ease. This answer is reasonable, but I don't think you have ever been happy. Lan Si looked at her. Girl, what about you? Gong Sunshue laughed self-deprecatingly. Your answer is the same as mine. They lived to dedicate their lives to the clan. They wanted peace and a clear conscience. That was the greater good. She slowly walked to the window. The cold wind blew on her face, just like her mood at the moment. Since I was young, everyone told me that my mission was to grow up and become stronger. Then, I would take over the position of a lord. I would work hard, love the people, and benefit the country. They said it over and over again. I believed them and engraved them in my mind. I dare not forget. For so many years, I have been working hard. I kept absorbing knowledge. I learned how to kill, how to scheme, and how to become cold-blooded. Because people in high positions cannot be soft-hearted. Once soft-hearted, they will be doomed. But recently, I suddenly realized that I'm not happy at all. Or, I don't even know what happiness is. Girl, Lan Si took a step forward. His turbid eyes were full of pity. For more than 10 years, he had never heard her speak so much, and the contents of her words were so heartbreaking. Everyone has their own destiny in this world. Everyone has a different mission. Just like you're destined to be the master of a sect, the leader of a country. This is something that cannot be changed. This old man loves you dearly, but I cannot change anything. Gongsun Xue's eyes dimmed. Yes, because the mission on my shoulders is different. I have to bear all. Child, you've suffered. Lan Si moved her lips. In the end, all the comforting words were left with this sentence. No matter how much she said, it couldn't cover up her frailty. However, when Gong Sunshue turned around, the sadness in her eyes had been replaced by a faint light. High Priest, I'm not saying all this to complain to you, nor am I complaining about the unfairness of the heavenly Tao. Everyone has their own fate. This is destined and cannot be changed. I won't resist either. But now, I feel that this is an opportunity to change the situation in North Korea. We have to seize it well and not let it slip by. Lan Si was relieved that the person in front of him had regained her vitality. He had not misjudged this child. Even if she encountered setbacks, she would not wallow in sorrow and would continue to move forward. All right, speak. This old man is listening. Gongsun Xue walked to the desk and dipped the brush in ink. Then, she drew a circle on the side of the map. This is the territory of the Japanese. It is currently in Murong Yunchuan's hands. This is the half of the moon's territory that Su Yu and Gongsun Fei have occupied. Wait, most of the territory that they have occupied is actually close to the Japanese. Lan Si had only discovered this when he looked at the area that Gongsun Xue had drawn. His tone was full of surprise. Gongsun Xue revealed a meaningful smile, That's right. I arranged it on purpose. Suyu's little tricks had aroused her vigilance. Gongsun Fei had arrogantly provoked her and did not know how to hide her ambitions. Thus, she had sent people to investigate them. This was how she had discovered that Suyu was using his position to plant his people. Thus, she had deliberately transferred all the officials in the cities close to the Japanese. Suyu had thought that this was a good opportunity and immediately stuffed his people there. Thus, he had moved his stronghold to that side. Lan Si was surprised. Girl, why did you do this? Could it be that you had already predicted that Murong Yunxian would reclaim all the Japanese territory? Then, you wanted to use Suyu and Gongsun Fei to block the way and borrow Murong Yunchuan's hand to destroy them? But that was not right. If Murong Yunxian defeated Suyu and the others, wouldn't that be the same as giving half of the country to Murong Yunxian? Lan Si couldn't quite understand her actions. She had already thought of the high priest's doubts. She withdrew her pen and stood straight, facing him. Her expression was calm as she said, High priest, how has the Yu clan been doing these years? Lan Si pondered for a moment. There are many factions competing. Although the other factions are not doing well, Suyu's faction is not to be underestimated. If we do not control it well at this time, the other factions are likely to use this opportunity to strengthen themselves. We cannot tolerate this. Gongsun Shui asked again. Then, what about the people under our rule? Lan Si revealed a difficult expression. For so many years, this old one has focused on teaching you and handling the affairs of the clan. I do not know much about the affairs of the people. Gongsun Shui smiled. High priest, this question I will answer for you. Since my father's death, the lives of Yu clan's people have not been stable. Even our clan is living like this, let alone the Japanese. Back then, Suyu plotted against the Japanese. Our army entered the Japanese territory and defeated the Sunflame sect. However, we took over the territory, but did not give the Japanese people a good life. I was in the Yu clan, so I did not know how the officials I sent out were managed. In addition, there were many restrictions and hidden secrets. I thought that the Sun and Yu clans were living happily. At this point, Gongsun Shui's eyes suddenly became sharp and cold. The truth is that the people we sent out did not manage the Japanese properly. Instead, they increased taxes without permission, oppressed the people, and committed crimes. They did not treat the people as human beings at all. This caused the people to have no way to make a living, and grief is everywhere. If I had not come incognito this time, I would still be in the dark. Lan Si never expected this. His hands trembled, and his eyes were filled with shock. This, high priest, isn't our responsibility to let the people live a happy and prosperous life? However, after so many years, it is now contrary to our beliefs. Are we just going to sit here and wait for death? Gongsun Shui's words made Lan Si completely speechless. This child said so much just to persuade him for the next plan. He could not help but take a deep breath and prepare to resist the storm. Then what is your plan? Chapter 16-17. He had been waiting for the high priestess to say this. Gongsun Shui picked up the brush again and drew a circle around the entire map. Then, she put it down and said firmly, There can be no construction without destruction. At first, Lan Si did not understand what she meant. However, when his gaze fell on the circled map of North Korea, he suddenly understood and became excited. Girl, are you planning to truly unify North Korea? Gongsun Shui smiled faintly and nodded. She put down the brush in her hand and stood with her hands behind her back. Her expression was somewhat hopeful. North Korea was originally one country, but it was divided into two because of the conflict between the Sun Clan and the Moon Clan. Now, there are 3 factions. Once all 3 factions are united, we will truly go to war and unify North Korea. This will be much faster than us gathering them bit by bit. Lan Si was overjoyed. I've always thought that you were promising. If you can conquer the 2 clans this time and secure your position as sect master, then even if I die, I will be able to face your father calmly. Gongsun Shui was not as excited as the high priestess. A complicated expression appeared on her face. She thought of many things, and in the end, a faint bitterness appeared at the corner of her lips. Girl, why aren't you saying anything? Lan Si had been happy for a long time, but when he saw her standing there in a daze without saying a word, he could not help but feel strange. Gong Suanshua looked up and smiled. High Priestess, you've forgotten that I don't have long to live. Only then did Lan Si remember that this girl had an illness from her mother's womb. His joy from before was diluted, and his expression turned solemn. You little girl, what are you saying? This old man has already found several famous doctors for you. If these people can't cure you, we'll find more. This old man doesn't believe that no one can cure this illness. Gong Suanshua looked deeply at the old man in front of her, and her eyes became slightly moist. High Priestess, we can't lie to ourselves. If we could find someone, we wouldn't have searched for more than 10 years. Now, we have to prepare for the worst. As she spoke, she hid the emotions in her eyes and regained her usual calmness. Her voice was filled with determination. The country will definitely be unified, but we must choose a successor. I will handle this matter. High Priestess, please help me take care of the frontline matters. Girl, Lan Si didn't expect that she would actually make arrangements for her funeral. He looked at the child he had watched grow up and sighed. Now that things had come to this, they had to see the truth and not blindly deceive themselves. This old man understands. I will do my best to help you. Thank you, High Priest. Gong Sun Shui smiled as she watched the High Priest walk away. When she was the only one left in the hall, she reached out and caressed the map of North Korea. She traced the Ri territory with her finger and smiled. If the High Priest knew about her plan, he would think that she was crazy. However, there was no turning back for her. She retracted her hand and looked into the dark night. And that man who streaked across her life like a shooting star was probably the brightest color in her life. 3 days later, Water Spirit was recuperating, but she didn't neglect any of the work at hand. While she was here, the pigeon feather she had left at the Yu clan kept sending her information. Everyone knew that there was no point in being anxious. So other than Shui Ling losing her composure that day, she had been very calm every day, neither arrogant nor impatient. Seeing this, Chu Qing Yin felt both heartache and gratification. Love was the greatest motivation that supported a person's life. On this day, the Xiao residents received 2 extremely important letters. Chu Qing Yin opened the letter sent by Jean Xin. After reading it carefully, her brows relaxed. She said to everyone, Jean Xin says that he has found the culprit behind the Murong clan's tragedy. In half a month, he will lead the army and demand an explanation from the Yu clan. Although he wanted an explanation, everyone knew that the war between the Sun and Yu clan was unavoidable. The retired emperor clapped his hands happily and praised. This kid didn't disappoint us. He settled the internal affairs so quickly and is ready to take revenge. Congratulations. Everyone agreed. At this time, Water Spirit also opened the letter sent by the pigeon feather. However, everyone noticed that her fingers were trembling slightly, as if she was trying her best to control something. Guoling couldn't help but ask worriedly, Water Spirit, don't scare us. What did the letter say? Water Spirit sniffed. Her eyes were red, but the smile on her face revealed her emotions. The pigeon feather sent news that someone saw Feng Ling appear in the Yu clan's capital half a year ago. Really? Everyone was a little excited. They had searched high and low for him, only to find him without any effort. After the excitement, everyone calmed down. Chu Qingyin thought of something and asked, did he say what he was doing in the capital? The letter didn't say. Water Spirit calmed down after being happy. If he was free, he wouldn't have stayed there. He would have joined us as soon as possible. At this point, Water Spirit immediately turned to the person on the main seat. Master, this subordinate was worried that Feng Ling was being controlled by someone, so he couldn't leave. Xiao Su's eyes turned cold. It seems like we have to make a trip there ourselves. When he said this, everyone was happy and went to make preparations. Soon, only the husband and wife were left. Chu Qingyan sensed the big ice cube's gaze and looked back at him coldly. If you want me to stay, go find Feng Ling yourself. Don't even think about it. Not only is there no door, there's no window either. Xiao Su chuckled when he heard this. He raised his hand to pinch her angry cheeks and said amusedly, I haven't even said anything, but you already know. Don't think that I don't know what you're planning. Anyway, I'll say it right here. If you dare to leave me alone, then don't come back. When the child is born, you don't have to see him either. Be prepared to have no family, no wife, and no child. Chu Qingyan angrily slapped his hand away, looking like he had no right to touch her now. Xiao Su didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her rebuke, but looking at her appearance, she was capable of doing it. Mia, I'm practically in your clutches. Xiao Su reached out and scooped her up. Although she was already 3 to 4 months pregnant, her body was still too small and too light. Chu Qingyan was afraid of hurting the child, so she didn't struggle and allowed him to carry her on his lap. Her fingers grabbed his lapel and threatened fiercely, If you dare to abandon the family and the child today, I'll run away with the child and marry again. Just as she finished speaking, she felt the hand around her waist tighten. She was forced to look up, and before she could see clearly, his lips pressed down. Their lips intertwined, attacking and conquering with a hint of punishment, causing her to lose her ground inch by inch. He only let her go when she was out of breath. He scooped her body into his embrace and coldly said, "Don't think of leaving me and marrying again. From now on, you must not leave my side. You're not allowed to bargain." Chu Qingyan was still in a daze. Did she persuade the big ice cube, or was she threatened by the big ice cube? Chapter 16:18. The trip to the Yu clan was set for 3 days later, but no one knew about it yet. Only Xiao Lai and the retired emperor knew. On this day, Xiao Su found Xiao Yao in Gong Sun Shui's courtyard. "Imperial brother, are you here to persuade me too?" "Don't worry, I'm not that weak. I just can't find a place to rest. I like this tree, so I came here. Do I look like someone trapped by love? So don't waste your time on me. It's more important to spend time with sister-in-law." Xiao Yao leaned against the tree trunk and lowered his head to look at the people under the tree. He had a smile on his face that was brighter than the sun, but there was some distress in his eyes. It was as if he couldn't understand why everyone had been so careful to protect him, as if he was a fragile jade. For example, his imperial brother in front of him. Xiao Su stood motionless and looked back at his younger brother with indifferent eyes. If he didn't forget, his younger brother was best at disguise. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to avoid his imperial father's probing and consort-used trap every time. "I haven't exercised in a long time. Let's fight." When his imperial brother said this, Xiao Yao was stunned. Fighting with his imperial brother. Wasn't he looking for death? "Imperial brother, the weather is clear and the wind is gentle. Don't you think it's a good time to go out with sister-in-law?" Xiao Yao immediately used his sister-in-law as a shield. But today, no matter who he used, it was useless. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. "Come down." Xiao Yao saw that his imperial brother looked like he was going to chop the tree if he didn't come down. So he immediately rolled down. "Imperial brother, I'm just a flowery martial artist." Just before he could finish, he had already attacked. He couldn't retreat and could only brace himself to receive the attack. It had only been 10 moves, and Xiao Yao had already been punched twice. He said with a sad face, "Imperial brother, show me your true skills." Xiao Su said mercilessly. Xiao Yao wanted to cry. There was no doubt about his imperial brother's martial arts. How could he dare to show off in front of Master Guan? However, his imperial brother had already spoken, so he couldn't avoid it no matter what. He could only use all of his strength to counter every move that came his way, so that he wouldn't be beaten too badly. However, an hour later, Xiao Yao appeared in the meeting hall with a swollen face. He complained tearfully to Chu Qingyan, who was applying medicine for him. "Imperial sister-in-law, imperial brother bullies the weak. Look, he slapped my handsome face until it's swollen. We've already agreed that when hitting someone, don't hit their face." "Oh, my reputation." Chu Qingyan really wanted to squeeze out a few words to comfort Xiao Yao, but seeing him like this, she couldn't help but laugh. When Xiao Yao saw her convulsing with laughter, he couldn't help but lean against the chair and close his eyes, pretending to be dead. They were all jackals of the same tribe. Xiao Su sipped his tea. Seeing him like this, he couldn't help but mock. Useless. He didn't know if she was saying that his martial arts were useless, or that he had been forcing himself to smile for the past few days. When Xiao Yao heard this, he immediately didn't dare to make a sound. Louder! Xiao Yao, whose face had just been smeared with the colorful ointment, shuddered. Imperial Brother called him with such an unfriendly tone. Was he going to fight again? However, all of this only came from his imagination. Xiao Su's tone was very normal. In 3 days, we will leave for the Yu clan. If you don't want to come with us, you can stay. This time, Xiao didn't pretend to be dead. He suddenly raised his head. Imperial Brother. Xiao Su ignored his gaze and continued. Jin Xin has already conquered the Sun clan. Now that there is internal strife in the Yu clan, before this month, Jin Xin will prepare to attack the Yu clan. After saying this, Xiao Su stood up and prepared to leave. Xiao Yao jumped up like a carp. Ignoring the injuries on his body, he immediately jumped in front of him. Imperial Brother, internal strife in the Yu clan? Then Miss Gong's son, the moment he said this, he revealed the emotions he wanted to hide. However, at this time, he couldn't care less. Xiao Su wasn't surprised by his reaction. He glanced at him indifferently. Didn't you say that Gong's son Shue's matters have nothing to do with you? Imperial Brother. Xiao Yao flew into a rage out of humiliation. He was anxious and didn't care about his tone. During this period of time, he pretended that he didn't care about anything. He even avoided talking about the Sun Moon clan. As a result, he didn't know what was going on outside. Xiao Su looked at his panda eyes and shook his head. He said, "What do you want to know? Go and find the fire spirit." After saying this, he took the little fellow and walked out the door. After a few steps, a gust of wind blew past them. Chu Qingyan watched the green-robed figure disappear into the small path and sighed softly. There were 3 things in this world that couldn't be hidden: cough, poverty, and love. The more one tried to hide something, the more obvious it would be. How could Xiao Yao's feelings for Gong's son Shui be covered up just because he didn't say anything? The sadness he showed when there was no one around, the avoidance when he heard people talking about Gong's son Shui, the loneliness when he saw the things that Gong's son Shui left behind. He didn't know where his feelings came from, but he was already deeply in love. She shook their intertwined hands. The person beside her retracted his gaze and turned to her with a questioning look. Look at how he's been holding it in for so long. So you came up with the idea of fighting to let him vent his frustrations. Why didn't you tell him? Although she already knew the answer in her heart, she still wanted to hear what he had to say. Husband and wife didn't have to talk just because their hearts were connected. Wouldn't that mean that they had nothing to say to each other? Xiao Su smiled softly. I couldn't stand it. The men of the Xiao family aren't so weak. If they like something, they like it. If they let it go, they let it go. They never lie to themselves. Furthermore, his acting was too clumsy. I just wanted to beat him up to vent my anger. I'm not as noble as you think. Big Ice Cube was getting better and better at lying through his teeth. It wasn't that Xiao Yao's acting was too clumsy, but that his eyes were too sharp. He was obviously doing it for Xiao Yao's sake, but he didn't want to say it out loud. People always left a soft spot in their hearts for their loved ones, but they were always tough on the surface. People couldn't help but fear them. The way they expressed their concern was also different from others. However, those who truly treated them as family would understand. Big Ice Cube, fortunately, there aren't too many obstacles between us. She hugged his arm and rejoiced. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? You see, Ethereal and Yin Luo have been enemies for years. Third brother and Jijing have been separated for 3 years after falling off the cliff. Second brother and Gong's son Shui are separated by the Sun clan and the Moon clan. It's like Romeo and Juliet. Family feud. Xiao Su didn't think much of it. Second brother has nothing to do with the Sun clan and the Moon clan. He's free to marry. Chu Qingyan suddenly understood. Big Ice Cube, you're right. Speaking of which, he felt that there were no obstacles between him and the little girl. Then, wouldn't the 5 years when she grew up be an obstacle? He stroked her head. Fortunately, all the misfortunes were over. No matter how many obstacles they had to overcome, they had already crossed over. Chapter 1619. After learning about the situation between the Sun Clan and the Moon Clan from Hualing, Xiao Yao returned to Gong Sunshue's courtyard in a daze. He had pretended not to care about anything these days, so he had missed out on so much news. Now that the Moon Clan was facing internal strife and foreign enemies, she must be in a terrible fix right now. Even though she and Jean Xin were enemies, at this moment, he really wanted to stay by her side. She was a person who wouldn't even cry out in pain. No matter how anxious or uncomfortable she was, she wouldn't tell anyone. She would just silently endure it. The thoughts that he had been suppressing these days erupted like a spring in this moment. These days, he didn't think about her, but her every frown, every smile, and every action followed him like a shadow. He stood under the tree and reached out to touch the mottled tree bark. Only when the thin branches dug into his fingertips did he come back to his senses. He was angry at her, but he wasn't angry at her identity. He was angry at her for not trusting him and for using him. Xiao Yao was a prince. No matter how carefree he usually was, he was still proud. Moreover, he had been deceived and used before. This had become his bottom line, his reverse scale. After learning the truth that day, how could he allow himself to act like nothing had happened and interact with her like normal? So he forced himself. No matter if he liked her or not, he had to forget her. He had to give up this memory. However, when he learned that she was in a dilemma and could face the dangers of war at any time, he couldn't lie to himself anymore. So he had already fallen this deep. Ever since the truth had been revealed, he had never thought about it from her position. If he was in her position, he probably wouldn't have done any better than her. What she did was actually pardonable. Since he cared about it, then there was no need to deny it. Could it be that he really had to wait until everything was irreparable before he regretted it? This wasn't his Xiao Yao's style of doing things. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but take back his hand. The disappointment on his face disappeared. His thin lips hooked up, and he revealed a determined smile. He thought that once he passed, he would once again be the carefree and unrestrained king of freedom. He immediately made a decision and walked towards his royal brother's courtyard. He wanted to go to the Moon Clan. This was Xiao Yao. Although in the eyes of outsiders, his actions were eccentric, he lived a carefree life. He did things according to his heart, did not care about what others thought of him, and never left behind any regrets. Chu Qingyan found time to find Dongting because there were still 2 days to go. "Where's Tao Tao?" Seeing that he was sitting alone in the courtyard, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but look around. Higashio Motetsu stretched lazily and interrupted her. "Don't bother looking for her. She went out to buy something." "Then why didn't you go with her?" Higashio Motetsu stopped stretching and said with an unnatural expression, "Why should this young master go with her? I'm not her servant." "Oh." Chu Qingyan dragged the last syllable, making him feel uncomfortable. She then continued with a secret smile. "Then usually when you go out, she doesn't leave or abandon you. It's not very good for you to be so heartless, right?" The words, "doesn't leave or abandon you," and the sudden label of heartless made Higashio Motetsu almost choke on his saliva. He glared at her angrily. "No way. I realize that you've been with Xiao Su for a long time. Instead of learning the good, you've learned the bad. You won't stop until you're shocked to death." Chu Qingyan shrugged. "I'd rather you praise me for being eloquent." Higashio Motetsu made a tisk sound and continued to enjoy the sun. Chu Qingyan spread her hands and sat down on a bench with Jasper's help. The breeze was gentle and the sun was bright. It was really a good day. "Daunting, you should have heard the news that we're going to the Yu clan, right?" Chu Qingyan raised her hand and made a small tent in front of her forehead. She looked at the flock of geese flying in the distance without blinking and casually mentioned this matter. Higashio Motetsu yawned and also casually replied, "I know. Let me know before we set off." This young master can't guarantee that I won't oversleep. Chu Qingyan smiled and retracted her hand to look at him. What I mean is, you and Tao Tao shouldn't go this time. Why? Higashio Motetsu instantly narrowed his eyes and propped himself up to look at her. Chu Qingyan revealed an innocent expression and said sincerely, "The Yu Clan civil war is fierce. This trip will be dangerous. I don't want you and Tao Tao to be involved in these disputes. After all, this has nothing to do with you. So you two can stay here or go somewhere else to play. Don't go near the Yu Clan's territory for the time being." She heard him snort coldly and reject her suggestion without thinking. We're friends for. Isn't it to enjoy blessings and endure hardships together? It's impossible for me to back off at a time like this. Moreover, aren't you the one who should be avoiding? Why are you, a pregnant woman, joining in the fun? Didn't Xiao Su stop you? What's all this about? Seeing him jump to his feet and criticize her, Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. I was the one who wanted to go, and he agreed. But I really don't want you to get involved. Daunting, take Tao Tao back to the Sichuan. Higashio Motetsu gritted his teeth. In your dreams, Dongting, I am serious. Chu Qingyan tried her best to persuade him. Higashio Motetsu suddenly changed his attitude. He crossed his legs and lay back on the rocking chair with a devilish smile on his face. My legs are on my body. I can go wherever I want. You can't control me. Seeing this shameless person, Chu Qingyan sighed deeply. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have come to persuade this guy. She would have left it to Big Ice Cube to handle. After Chu Qingyan left, Higashio Motetsu straightened his body and rubbed his chin. Since he had decided to go to the Yu Clan, he had to give Tao Tao some instructions. Speak of the devil. Look at what I bought back. Tao Tao waved the things in her hands at him. Higashio Motetsu's gaze swept over when he heard this. He saw that she was holding a bouquet of flowers in both hands. There was more than one variety on it, and it was colorful. In this cold season, it was very eye-catching. Didn't you go to buy accessories? How did it become flowers? Higashio Motetsu raised his eyebrows. These flowers are beautiful, and they're not real flowers. I saw someone making handicrafts, so I made this bouquet and put it in your room. You can see it every day. It won't wither, and you don't need to change the water. I'm very smart, aren't I? Tao held it in front of him and said as if she was presenting a treasure. He teased, the shop owner is the smart one. But I have a good eye. Tao pouted in protest. Higashio Motetsu didn't comment. I'll take it to your room first and put it in for you. Tao stuck her tongue out at him and turned to leave. Wait, don't be in such a hurry. I have something to tell you. Tao stopped and turned to look at him with sparkling eyes. What is it? I'm going to the Yu Clan with Qingyan and the rest, but it's very dangerous there. You have to stay. With that, the bouquet in her hands fell to the ground. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.